Can you fucking speak into the mic?
Yeah.
So if you extend it a little farther, put it out in front, just pull it.
Right there. I got it. Hey, what's up? Is that good right there?
Yeah, I like it.
I kind of like it.
I don't know why, but I always feel like I'm louder than everybody.
Yeah, you are loud.
I'm so loud. All right, I'm going to turn me down and turn you up a little.
Hey, what's up? Oh, because you know what it is? We're sharing the volume of our headphones.
What do you mean?
I don't know.
No, you have your own volume.
Where's my volume?
See number 2? That's
Number 2.
that right there, that's you.
Yeah.
So that's your headphone volume.
All right. Let's just do the whole podcast on volumes.
Yeah. And let's do a tutorial on how to use.
I want the whole podcast to be about tech. Like we're about the microphones we're using,
right?
About the
so this
holders.
XLR cable right here, right? So I went with the double shielded, black on black.
I love the double shielded.
Well, you want the shield. You don't know what waves are kicking out.
Yeah.
You don't want microwaves or FM signals are going out that are gonna. The last thing you want is to do a podcast and the entire time you have.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know that. I forgot that we were videoing as well. And when I left the house, I go, "Oh, I have shorts on," and I'm stoked that me in shorts isn't really in the shot.
Not that one. The main shot. We got full legs.
Oh,
so I mean, show it off.
Okay,
those calves look good.
There you go. I work out.
Do you?
Yeah, I love it. Don't you work out?
Not enough. I go through stretches.
Yeah.
I had a trainer for a good while, like almost 2 years straight.
Dude,
and they came to my house and he kicked my, because that's the person I am. Like, I don't, hey, James, do you want to get healthy? Yeah. Hey, James, do you want to eat better? Yeah, of course. I want to be stronger. I want to be skinnier. Okay, cool. All you have to do is this hour a day. Okay. And then dude, there's so many things that need to get done before that gets done.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's just my brain. And like, I'm a weirdo in the sense where I'm like, well, it's already 10. If I go work out now, then the day is shot.
I'm a morning guy. If I don't work out, like I trip out when I know people, they go, "Oh, I work all day and then I'm gonna hit the gym on the way home from work." I'm like, never gonna happen. I have to wake up in the morning. First thing I do is go, all right, I'm gonna have this coffee on the way to the gym, because if I don't get the gym out of the way,
and you go to the gym.
I go to the gym, dude.
Then do you have like a workout buddy or anything?
No.
Or you just get there? Are you a headphone in the zone?
No, what I am now is. Like right now, since the weather's gotten better, it's wake up in the morning, go surfing, no matter what. Like I used to be like, I'm going to look at Surfline,
it's thing too easy to look and be like, oh, it's only 2 feet.
I'm not going.
Yeah, you just go. You just go
out of it. So now my new thing is get up in the morning and right away.
What time do you get up?
Like I'm like a 7 a.m. guy, depending on like last night, we did comedy. So I came home, I was revved up from the show.
Yeah.
And I, next thing you know, I'm like watching some documentary, reading this, reading that. Okay, cool. And then I'd crash out. So I got up, and then I knew I had to crash out early because I was going to, get here for you.
What was early?
Well, I don't know. I went last night like midnight, something like that. And then got up at 7, made some phone calls,
Who are you calling at 7 a.m.?
My sister.
Does she live not on the West Coast?
No, she's on the West Coast. We talk every morning.
Every morning?
Every morning.
Older sister, younger sister?
Younger.
How much younger?
Let me see. I think she's like 6 years, 5 years, something like that.
And you talk every day?
Every day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Has that always been a thing?
No. Only started after my mom died.
That makes sense.
No, but yeah, you know what? We bonded. We've always, like, the relationship I've had with her has always been amazing. But she's my younger sister, so there was always this, like, I think for a part of our life, it was like I was the older brother, that's my kid sister, and you kind of go through this relationship where like they're younger than you, like, oh cool, like, oh, so like as you're growing up, it's like you still play with toys, I skateboard, and then
because she was just young, like she was younger, not like, oh, we're gonna have the same friends in middle school. No, she was like, she might as well, this sounds weird, but like she was like a kid you took care of. Like
exactly.
you were kind of a parent figure, uncle figure.
Yeah, when I was a kid, my mom was a single parent. My parents got divorced when I was 10. So I was, my sister and I grew up with, come home from school and we had our chores to do, and she had
at whose house?
At my mom's.
So you lived with mom.
Lived with mom in Santa Cruz, California, but what, as an older brother, I would just tease her and I would just wreck her all day long. Like it was just like, what am I going to do? I'm going to do all the chores I got to do, and then I'm going to work on my homework, and then I'm going to tease my sister. I'll make her cry, and then then I'll go skateboard with my friends.
What do you think drove that? Why the tease the sister?
because it was just because you know what it was. This is the thing that I, as a brother, it took a long time for me to be comfortable with it. My sister loves and adores me so much it would make me feel uncomfortable.
Even back then.
Back then.
Yeah. And so it's just like, get away from it.
Back then, I don't know. You know, I'm a 10-year-old. I'm a 15-year-old. I don't know. I don't understand how someone can just unconditionally love you so much. And I didn't but what it did was it was a bit of like nails on a chalkboard for me, because she just loved me. I was her older brother. And then as I got older and I got in bands, she loved my bands. And then all of a sudden, you know, what ended up happening was she started becoming, you know, the woman that she was going to become. And she's excelled academically like crazy. My sister, so smart. She's got a PhD. She speaks Italian fluently. Like while I was staying in, you know, my dad used to always invite me to go. Every year he would go. He was a teacher, so he would take the summer off, and then he would go to like Italy or England. And at the time I was really into punk rock, you know, when I was 15, and he would say to me, this is in the 80s, he'd say, hey Joey, check it out. Like, I understand you're into punk rock, I get it, but like, come with me to England, because the bands that you're talking about, the GBHs, the Exploited, like I can take you to England, and everybody that you're into, like you think your punk rock crew here is cool, like I'll take you to a place called Piccadilly Circus, and you will be seeing the bands you talk about. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. And I wouldn't go with them on the summer because you ready for this? Because I was like, we have a show. My band would get booked to play like with Social Distortion, and my dad would be like, well, when's the show? And I'm like, in August. And he'd be like, Joey, this is June. I'm like, yeah, but we got to practice. Like, because back then you get one gig, you would take it so seriously.
And so meanwhile, he's like, I'm literally going to take you to Mecca of punk. Yeah,
you're going to be hanging your Piccadilly Circus, the song and Stiff Little Fingers, like, you know, like the band that you love, like singing about Piccadilly Circus. Yeah, like I'm going to take you there. Yeah, I don't know. But who did go was my sister. So what happened was, even though my parents were divorced, my dad was just, he lived 30 minutes away from where I grew up, or where I was living with my mom. And he was so integral in everything with us.
So he was involved. He was around.
God,
he wasn't
never missed a weekend.
But but he had weekends.
He had weekends.
Gotcha.
But every summer, but like he had weekends, and then the summer times, and then the Christmas vacations, and he was always, he was like such a part of my life, and even though my parents are separated, they did it right. Like now that I'm divorced, I want us to get to the place where my mom and I guess we are at the place because my mom and dad didn't talk, but hopefully my ex and I will get to that place.
What was the place?
You know what it was? They respected each other. I knew as a kid, even though my mom was pissed at my dad, she still was like, hey, your dad left a message, call him. And I'd be like, I don't know, like he's being late. Whoa. Joey, call him. He called you, you call him back.
Yeah, that's your dad.
That's your dad. And my mom, when I'd say to my dad, like, dude, she's being so lame. She said that I can't go to San Francisco and spend the weekend there. And he'd be like, all right, well, here's the deal. It's her house. It's her rules. Now, if you want to go and have, the rock and roll weekend, I've told you this a million times, then you got to move in with me. But if you're going to live there, those are her rules. But Dad, hey, I'm not going through this.
But you never moved in with Dad?
I did.
At what age?
I moved in with my dad at 15 years old.
About the time you want to start having rock and roll weekends.
I want to have rock and roll
And he was open to that.
Oh, God. Dude, my dad...
What did he do?
He was a teacher. He was a teacher.
What did he teach?
He had a once again, just a unique career. He was originally an English teacher.
Okay.
Like I remember as a little kid, he taught English, and at one point he got a job at a university where it was freshman English, and he was your freshman English teacher. And I remember during the weekends he would take me to this little skateboard park, and he would sit there and watch me skateboard while he graded papers. So I grew up with him always grading papers, and
still there, but taking you to the skate park and doing the stuff.
Absolutely. That was when my parents were together. And then when my parents separated, his career excelled, and he went from being an English teacher to being the dean of the university. And then ultimately he went on to being a vice president at UOP. And then he was at the Art Institute in Chicago.
He had literally a punk rock kid, and he wasn't embarrassed. He supported it and pushed you.
It's funny because he says to this day, what he brought to the table was the people that he was teaching in the 80s. Mm-hmm. So he had his English class, or he's teaching at this university. So when punk rock hit the States, he saw it before anyone did. So that's a punk rocker. This kid looks different. And my dad was drawn to those kids because what he loved about those kids there was the rest of the student body that was, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but what he said was, the rest of the people that were going to college were like, I'm going to college, I'm going to get married, I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to retire, and I'm going to have the house, and we're going to have
they were boring.
They were going to have that. And then what my dad loved was these kids that all of a sudden started showing up in his class with the mohawk and the spiky hair, and they would question, and they had a whole different outlook on like, well, what's going on with that, and what's going on with this, and he was drawn to those kids because he goes, wow, these kids, are asking great questions, and they're in it, and they're here for a reason, and he loved the uniqueness and the individuality of punk rock until his son got into it. It was like, and at that moment, I remember I moved in with him, and it was 82, and I was into punk rock, and that was the whole reason why my mom sent me to go live with my dad. It all accumulated to one night. I was a sophomore in high school, and I was testing the waters, and I was like, look, at that time, punk rock to me in Santa Cruz, California was, Levi's, Vans tennis shoes, a shaved head, and like a flannel. That was like, whoa, you're crazy, maybe bleach your hair. And then what was going on, 30 miles away from me in San Jose and then up in San Francisco was like, that there was a real punk rock scene. But back then there's no internet,
right?
There's no way to see what's going on. So I would go visit my dad on the weekends. And when I started visiting my dad on the weekends, there was a skateboard park by his house. And at that skateboard, and skateboarding was everything to me. It was the only sport I excelled in. It was the only sport that like I saw progression, only sport that I felt comfortable doing. And when I started going to the skateboard park, the other thing that was there was, it was the first time I heard music that wasn't the Village People or ABBA or what was on the radio. It was like Black Flag, The Germs, Sex Pistols, Ramones. And I was like, all of a sudden that was like, what's that? So then I really got involved. I really got interested in that. And then ultimately when I was living with my mom, and then it was like my sophomore year, it was like, all I was doing was like, I was reading about these bands, and I was skateboarding more and meeting more kids in my scene. And ultimately it came down to like a Friday night where like I went out one night. My mom was like, yeah, I need to have you home at like 8:00. I was like, what? I go, Mom, like, that's not going to work. And she was like, I don't care. And like she had rules where like, you can't drive. Like these kids were like going to a show, and they're like, Joey, we'll give you a ride. And I'm like, my mom won't let me drive with people that they're like, what? They were like seniors, and my mom's like, no. And I had to like ride my bike behind, where it was so lame. But looking back on it as a parent, I understand what her fears were.
Yeah.
But what happened was my dad ultimately, that was it. My mom was like, I came home. I came home. I just went for like, F you, I'm coming home whenever. And I came home that night at midnight, and she was like, I'm done. You're out of here. When your dad comes to pick you up tomorrow for the weekend, grab all your stuff. You're moving in with him. And I was like, it was always a threat.
Yeah.
But my mom would threaten me with it, but my dad never, I think she thought, I'm going to rain on your parade and have a 15-year-old move in with you and see how you like that in your, at the point.
So she was almost trying to punish both of you.
Trying to punish both of us. But my dad was like, bring it on. Like, I'd love you to live with me because then I don't have to drive over here every weekend. Grab all your, I'll never forget. He goes, I go, Mom says I got to live with you. And he goes, okay, cool. Are you down for that? And I'm like, I will. And she was like, well, he doesn't have a choice in it. He's out right now. She took all my stuff. She brought it outside. And my dad was like, okay, cool. Make sure you don't forget anything because I'm not coming back.
What about your sister? Was he around for her?
My sister, no. Well, at this point, my sister was younger. So I bail on my sister. I'm like, later.
No,
good
yeah,
luck.
but I mean more for
him.
him because he was saying,
Oh
I'm
no,
not going.
he was always, you know, she was probably sitting in the back seat like, oh, I guess you live with dad now, and I'll come back on Sunday.
Gotcha.
But then, you know, she stayed with my mom, which, you know, was fine. But at 15, I was out, and I went. I went.
And it's not your job at 15 to be there. I mean, in a weird way, to be there for your sister. You love your sister. You care about your sister. You punch your sister in the face.
Dude,
but
I never punched my sister in the face, but I definitely did things to her that probably scarred her as much as that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant by that.
Yeah.
not necessarily
I was so
physically.
bad to my sister. Dude, I was the brother, and my sister always tells this one story where I would go into her room, like her bedtime was at whatever time. I would go in there an hour earlier, get underneath her bed on the floor. She would go in to go to bed, and then an hour after, I would lay there underneath her bed.
It's a lot of premeditation.
Totally. And just to let her fall asleep. And so that an hour and a half into her sleep, I'd start moving the bed around, start making, and just to and then when she would be in the midst of freaking out, I'd jam out of my room, go in my room and get in bed, and then she'd come out totally scared. I'm like, what's wrong, Sarah? And she'd be like, oh, there's been.
She never knew it was you?
She never knew. I mean, she knows now.
Yeah. Now it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The scars then.
Yeah, I was so bad.
Dude, it's scary enough when you think there's something under there. There actually was for her. And she's literally like, nobody believes me.
No one believes me. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I was so bad. Hence the reason. But see, it all worked out. My sister's got a PhD. My sister's traveled the world. I
love how you say it all worked. No. I traumatized her, but it worked out. She should thank me. All I
know is this. She speaks Italian fluently. She's,
Are you taking credit?
No, what I'm saying is this. What's great about my sister is, my sister is a person of just mass knowledge, and I'm a dude in a room in a pair of shorts talking about how much I love the Ramones.
And punk rock and Ramones. Yeah. So your mom, like, how did you get along with mom besides that, or
totally.
like? Okay.
Well, no, we didn't get. No, wait, that's the thing. When I got, and I tell people all the time, like, it's funny because like at 15. You don't realize how much of an ass you are until you have your own kids. And I remember, writing an email to my mom and dad, and it was funny. Like I never really kept, like, they were always so individual. I always say the reason I got good at managing bands was because I dealt with my mom and dad. And
you were managing two different relationships of authority. I was dealing with the singer and the lead guitarist my whole life. It was like, and they hated it. They respected, yet didn't want to be in this band anymore.
Dude,
but we gotta be because the drummer's here and we gotta take care of the drummer.
I always say your family's like your first band. It's like mom and dad are Mick and Keith from the Stones. Mom and dad are like, it's like Tom. Well, with Blink-182, you got, obviously Travis, so like he's a ripping drummer. But like my point being is that, like, your mom and dad are the front men or the front people, and the kids are just like the roadies. No one really cares, and it's like all about them. It's about them, and they both, the way they carried themselves they like you just said, they respected each other, and they knew that the band was rad, but they didn't want to have to sit in each other's dressing rooms. Like if you go see the Stones, Keith's on one side of the facility and Mick's on the other. Like I had an opportunity. I knew this guy named Jason Flom. He ran Lava Records, and ultimately he was the president of Virgin Records. Okay. And him and I became really, really great friends. And he's a philanthropist. He does amazing work for people to get incarcerated on like 3 strikes, but like the last 2 strikes were like, I stole money, and then I not like I killed a bunch of people, like, people that like got busted for weed that are still in there, and he does all this work for them, and he's a great guy, and he became the president of Virgin Records, and we were bros, and he said to me, hey man, the Stones are coming to town, and I'm like, dude, he's like, and I'm like, dude, you're the president of Virgin Records. He's like, I know, and he's like, I'm going to the show, and he's like, let's go. So we all went, and I remember, watching the Stones, and you see the connection between Mick and Keith. They both respect each other, but before the show, they're like on different planets, man. And then they both just come to the stage. It's like,
so in their own dressing room and meet on the stage to do the show. Not like 30 minutes before they're in the room, Keith's fiddling, they're warming up. Like, do bands warm up? Like, how does
the
that
Ramones
work?
used to? Metallica does. When I was on the road,
like they'll jam in the back green room just a little bit.
One of the things when I was on the road with Metallica, one of the things that I thought was...
What a sentence, by the way, to be able to say as a human.
I know, crazy.
When I was on the road with Metallica, which we will get into.
Oh, my God. But the thing that I loved about Metallica was they went into this room every single night, and it was set up. It was a room, sometimes it was the size of this. Sometimes it was a little bit bigger. And they had gear in there.
Like a full setup.
Yeah, full setup. But it wasn't like, they were in this room rehearsing.
Yeah.
And it was super... It was super unique because, it wasn't like I was in that room allowed to watch, rehearse, but a lot of times because I was walking through or because I had to walk someone in there or because we were doing a bit, I'd get to go into the rehearsal room or be near it. And they rehearsed, if they were hitting the stage, at 8:30 that night, they would be in that rehearsal room right up until the time they come out on stage. So they're already playing the songs. So like they're not going up on stage cold. They're rehearsing. The only other band that I ever saw do that too was the Ramones. The Ramones, every time before they would go on stage, they wouldn't do it so much with like a full drum kit, but like, Marky at the time, he'd be playing, I believe, like on a drum pad. Don't quote me on that, but definitely Johnny Ramone and CJ Ramone, or when Dee Dee was in the band, they would definitely be playing. They had their instruments in their hands. They weren't like, hey man, I'm just going up cold, hand me the guitar and go. And I didn't realize it at the time, but what it does when you do that, it's the same as a comic. Like I have my best sets when we're all shooting the shit.
We're all shooting the shit. We're flowing. We're laughing. We're joking with each other.
And then they go, oh man, hey man, Joe, you ready? Okay, cool. And you go up and you've already, you've worked out all the kinks with your brain to your tongue to the words you're going to use. And
that was like last night. Did you see me run for the stage?
Dude, you ran.
Because I didn't know I was next. I thought there were like 2 more comics. I was still doing my like writing my set list up. I'm sitting next to Ellen. We're bullshitting, talking about something. Hey, James Schrader. I was like, oh shit.
I saw that.
I didn't record my set. I usually record it, whatever. I just like, oh man, I started running.
Yeah.
But then it was like,
ran.
I ran, because I felt like, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
But it is that moment where like you're in it, you like in a weird way, almost not knowing and just being in the moment with Ellen and talking and sitting in the back watching the comic, and all of a sudden, oh, I'm up. Oh, okay, here we are. And I just like the energy flowed into it.
I love that. And I think like what. When those bands do that, it's the same thing. They don't want to go up and like, and they're also, it's more physical, they're like laying into their guitar so they don't want to have a cramp in their, forearm or something like that. But, I mean, that, going back to like my mom and dad, I think the thing that the respect between them that they had for each other always kind of prevailed, even though they didn't talk. They did not talk. My mom and dad.
Did they talk about you?
Oh, they talk about me, but they didn't talk to each other.
Right. There was nothing. Yeah.
Everything went through me.
Oh,
I was like in The Godfather,
that's not
like in The Godfather or any of those movies that like if you look at Goodfellas, you remember like in Goodfellas where like there's the scene in the movie where like they don't want to talk on public phones, so anything that's going down is they write a little note and then the guy runs through the rain and then he calls on the public phone and tells the guy to go to the other public phone, and then it's all to get a message back from one family to another. I was the dude running around going, hey, Mom, Dad said that on Friday he's going to pick me up and then he's going to bring me back a little bit earlier on Sunday. Are you cool with that? What time on Sunday? Hey, Dad, Mom's cool with me coming home early on Sunday, but do you know what time? It's going to be 2 p.m. Okay. All right. Mom says it's cool. Are we good? We're good.
Were they ever like, yes, they respected each other, but divorce is hard? Did they ever talk shit
about each other? Never. They would get right to the moment, but they wouldn't do it.
That's good.
Now every once in a while, they might have they might bring something like, but my mom never was like, and I'll tell you right now, I never got your father. I never got that. And my dad never went for your mother. They never went for that.
That's beautiful. That's how divorce should be.
Yeah.
I mean, besides going through you's probably not the way to do it.
But it was a different era.
It was, totally was. But that was the era where
there's no texting.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no texting. There's
my ex and I do 99% of all communication through a text of like, this happened to the kid today. This is what we're doing. Does this work for you on Friday?
Yeah.
Da 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 da. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about anything.
So I think what ends up happening was, with my mom and dad, and the thing was too that I always respected about my mom and dad is they never made the divorce like it wasn't supposed to be traumatic. It wasn't supposed to, it's like, dude, it didn't work. Move
you got
on.
lucky.
They were just like, move on, and like as a kid, you're like, okay. And it was cool. And then all the way up until when my mom passed away, which was, which I thought was super cool was, my dad was the one who, I was on the road doing a show and my dad was the one who, had to call me and say, hey,
he told me that once.
Yeah. And I was like, and he was, I remember, it was the way he talked about it. He you could tell that this person meant a lot to him, even though they weren't married anymore or anything like that. And it was very respectful, and he was very like he was it was as much as they weren't together. I thought it was just it was fitting that like he'd be the one to go, all right, dude. So you spoke to your sister, because I couldn't. My sister was just she was beyond. She was the one that had to find her, the whole thing, or not find her, but like I think she did, yeah. And the thing that I thought was cool was my a lot of people might not be, I don't know, that involved, and he was definitely like, hey man, this is what he didn't say, hey man, but he was actually, I remember I was in Vegas doing a show, and I was featuring for Jim Brewer, and Jim had talked to my mom over the years, and because I think one time we were on tour, and my mom ate an edible. And I was like, what? I go, Mom, who gave you the edible? And she's like, my brother-in-law at the time got her an edible. And she's like, that doesn't even affect me. She's all done. Yeah. And Jim's like, really? It's not affecting? No, as we talked to her, on the phone, Jim's like, dude, it's affecting. we were laughing.
I'm guessing Jim's great with moms.
Yeah, dude, the best. The best. But it was funny. But so then I remember that night, I'm up in the hotel room, and the show's starting at like 7:30, and my dad, I find out at like 6:30, 7.
Oh man.
And I'm like, and my dad just says to me, he's like, hey man, he goes, Joey, he doesn't say hey man, he says, Joey, you got to do the show, and what I want you to do is this: don't bring it up to Jim, don't tell anybody about it, because it'll bring down the whole entire night. Yeah, that's not fair to the audience.
I'm surprised he called you before the show, but I'm sure he also didn't want you to find out some other way.
Well, yeah, my sister called me right away. She was like, when you like get out of the shower and you're like, why is there 17 missed calls?
Yeah.
And I was like, and then she's like, Mom, I was like, oh man. So the next call was from my dad. He's like, all right, you're in Vegas? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, all right, here's what you got to do. And we just went into show mode. He just went into show mode. He just went like pro.
Ran the band.
He ran the band. He went manager style. He's like, all right, here's the deal. This is this is something that this is a big deal. Yeah. Obviously, this is, we're going to have a lot to digest here, but right now you've got a show, and you have to go out there, and your mother would want you to crush it no differently than any other night. And you got to stay in the zone, and then we'll talk after the show, and then we can go down that road. But right now, I want you to do what you always do. Go down there, hang out, get ready for the show, do the show, and then do not bring it up to Jim, and then you can tell him afterwards. And I was like, all right, and that's what we did, and it worked. Yeah.
It's a crazy day.
It was crazy, because I talked to her that morning.
Thank God.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. I would talk to her all the time, man. That was the thing. See, the thing that happens with parents is this. From about 15 until the time, my mom and I didn't get along that well from about 15 to 22.
Yeah. Because from those ages, you look at your parents and are like, well, you don't know me. You don't know anything.
You don't know anything.
It's different now. You can't tell me how to live. Like, your parents become idiots.
And the reason that my mom and I, absolutely.
And meanwhile, you're the idiot.
You're the idiot. And what ends up happening is that between 15 and 21, and right around 22, 23, my mom and I then became the best of friends, because I started drinking. I smoked. She smoked. We bonded over. Like all of a sudden, you're like, my mom's cool. We can go to a bar together and hang out. My mom's cool. She likes cocktails at 2 p.m. too. My mom's cool. She'll drink beers in the car. My mom's cool. Yeah. No, I mean, my mom and I I'd go and visit her in Santa Cruz, and we would get a sixer, and we would go down to the beach and just sit there and drink beer
and
in
chat,
the car
and just bond.
Not like get smashed, but we'd drink a beer together. She'd smoke a cigarette. And then as I got older, it was like, when my band was doing well, she'd be like, I'd be like, Mom, we're headlining in San Jose. And she'd be like, yeah. And she would come, and she'd get there at sound check, and she'd have her purse. She'd have her red fingernail polish on.
She loved it, didn't she?
She loved it.
So that's like, you've met my mom.
I've never met your mom.
You've never met my mom?
No.
When I started comedy 11 years ago here, my mom would come out every so often, and all she wanted to do was come to the shows and hang out. And she'd sit in the back of the Madhouse. And this was when I first started, and I was doing, even open mics. She'd go, and we'd be out till 3:30 in the morning. My night did not change from a normal, like, Sunday night in San Diego open mic night where you're starting at the store was the first open mic at 8. Then you do the Madhouse at like 11.
Yeah.
And then you'd end up at till 2:30 in the morning. And then you'd be standing in the parking lot passing joints around. My mom was right there.
Same here.
She wanted nothing. All she wanted to do was be in it. She knew the comics. She talked to the comics.
Dude, my mom, same. It's the same person.
11 years later, I remember like I was doing a weekend. I was featuring at the store, and I was like, I was like, hey Mom, like I can run you home between shows. She's like, what are you talking about? I was like, it's like 6 hours sitting, like by the time for you to get there and to get through the late show and whatever, it's like 6 hours. And she's like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Just, I need another rum and Coke.
Yeah. That was my mom.
I was like, the headliner's telling the same jokes. I'm telling the same jokes. Like, you don't have to sit here. She's like, I love this.
Yeah. That was totally my mom. My mom, I remember my mom as a kid when I was in my early bands in San Jose,
That's special.
she would come to all the shows. I remember doing a stage
even when like, and this was
night.
after she kicked you out.
Oh yeah, no, because you see 15. So when I moved
when did the band start?
First band I'm in, I'm about 17, 18 years old.
Okay.
I'm 17, 18 years old. So she's at this point we're cool because I'm drinking beers, we're hanging out. I just got
You were
out of high
underage
school.
drinking
All the time
with her.
I didn't underage drink with her. You know what? I didn't. We did. Well, I was drinking beer. I would say this: when I turned 21 was when my band in San Jose started doing well, and I was 21. I was in my second year of college, and she would come out, and that's when we really bonded. Right around 2021, because at that point, you're 20. Guys are coming. The people are hanging out. I'm living in an apartment. She would come to visit.
Yeah.
But where we started, where we got over our hiccup was when I morphed into me as who I was,
and she recognized that and let it go.
Yeah.
She was like, I'm no longer, I know like moms never stop parenting, but I think there's a part of them where they go, you're done. Not done, but like,
how about this?
I'm not responsible for any of this anymore.
How about this?
But
I think what happened was I think you have a moment as a parent where for my mom, 15 to 18, she was convinced this guy's going to go out. Maybe he's going to be like out. He's going to start doing drugs. He's hanging around with these kids with mohawks. He's hanging around with these guys that have
he's a delinquent.
tattoos.
He looks like the delinquents in school.
He looks like he's out of control. Whereas my dad was like, dude, he's not out of control. The whole music scene he's into. There's a whole straight edge movement. There's knowledge is power. Like you're not looking, you're just seeing the outside of it, where my dad had already been involved with it. So he knew that the guy from Whipping Boy, one of our favorite bands, was a Stanford graduate. He knew that, these bands like Minor Threat and 7 Seconds were about, not drinking, not, having sex, not smoking. It was all about like straight edge. And like, I was a part of that movement. Now I drank beer and did all that, but the philosophies and the energy of it, I love. So like, I was really leaning on that more than I think my mom could see. She just saw a guy with
the haircuts and the clothes.
She saw the haircut and an anarchy sign and was like, this guy's out of control. So then then the other thing was too, is that I think my mom and dad thought it was a phase. My dad definitely thought it was a phase. My mom thought it was gonna last for whatever. So then all of a sudden I'm 20 with long blonde hair, wearing a bandana and singing in my band, and people are coming out to see us and we're getting paid. She's like, wow. And then I'm drinking beers and I'm like, and then she's like, I'm like, what do you need? And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, can you get my mom? She wants a glass of
mom's on the
Chardonnay.
tab. Mom's on.
Mom wants
How fun is it to say that?
Yeah, it's the best.
I don't know why, but there's something about bringing mom to a show.
It's the best.
And just being like, hey, this is my mom. She's on the tab. Okay. And your mom's just like, oh.
Yeah, my mom loved it. And then what ended up happening was, you go to one show and then, the next thing you know, she sees a bigger show and then all of a sudden you're opening for a bigger band. And then I remember one time doing a stage dive at San Jose at One Step Beyond. It was sometime in the 80s. It was one of our biggest shows, and at the time, I remember I did a stage dive and as I'm going back over the crowd, my mom's right up front throwing elbows and got her purse, her red fingernails polish, her hair. And I'm like, oh my God. And I remember I'm like, Mom, what are you? And she's just up there. I remember one time, even years later, when she was way older, I was in another band called 22 Jacks and we did a show and the pit was out of control and this kid on the outside of it went around and like pushed my mom. And the next thing I know, I'm on stage because my mom's in the center of the pit, just telling the kid, you don't go around the side of the pit throwing elbows. You do whatever you want here, but you do not do that.
She's mothering the pit.
She's mothering the pit. And I remember she gets into it with the kid and the kid says to her, F you. He goes, oh, really? Oh, really? So you don't even know who you told to F off right now. And then like, I'm sitting
She's swinging that purse, dude.
Swinging the purse. And I remember after the show, she grabs the kid and then, like, oh yeah,
like by the ear and walks him out.
Walks him up to me.
Who's your mother? What's your mother's number? I'm going to call your mother.
He's like, I'll never forget it. She runs the kid right up to me. And the kid's like, what the hell's going on? And she's like, Joey, this guy's throwing elbows outside of the pit. Tell him the rules. And I'm like, Mom, what's going on? He totally pushed me. Hey, I don't mind getting pushed, but I wasn't in the pit. I was outside the pit. He's going around. He's pushing all these girls. He's doing this, and the guy's just looking at me. And I'm like, bro, she's right, man. You can't be doing that. You gotta keep it tight. And he just like
that guy has that memory.
Yeah,
that's really funny.
That was my mom.
That's hilarious.
That was always my mom. So I think the mutual respect that like those two had for each other. But like I said, it really shaped my life because I learned how to, when I was managing bands, I learned how to work with them. I learned how to like be the middleman between two different people
and manage the expectations, manage the attitude, manage the message.
Yeah. When I managed the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones for like, I don't know, like maybe like 5 years or something like that. And there's Joe Gittleman, the bass player, and then there was Dickie Barrett, the singer. And those two guys are, at the time were just best friends. They did everything together. But when it came to the band, I remember Gittleman would have an idea and Dickie would have an idea. And then, I would be like, why don't the two of them just like, and then give it to me and we'll do it. But they had a way that it was like, it'd go into me. And it reminded me a lot of, my mom and dad, because they'd be like, hey, what did Joe say?
Because that's a skill. People don't, that's and
that's dealing with bands the whole time. Even when I was dealing with bands, I could always figure out who mom and dad were in the band. Like if a band came in, I'm like, okay, that's mom and that's dad. Okay, those are the kids, because you can figure it out really quick, because the meeting happens and the kids just leave and they go, is there beers? Is there weed? Like, where do we go? Like, dude, we're going out tonight. And then the mom and dad always stay longer and they're like, so what kind of deal are you offering us? So do you think this? And you're like, okay, these are the guys.
Is that every band? Does every band have like band. There's like the one or two that are like, we're gonna die for this, we're gonna do what it takes, we're gonna work hard, and then there's like the other two or other one that's like fucking rock star life, bro. Like,
I don't know if I've never dealt with like rock star life, but what I feel though is that you have, at least in my personal dealings with bands, is that it's there's people in the band I worked with this band called Gaslight Anthem, and the singer's named Brian Fallon. And I worked with them, and what I learned about them and what I loved about them was they were like the perfect mesh. They had Brian Fallon, the singer. He's the writer. He definitely he's definitely the as far as the music and lyrics go, he's coming in with the vision, he's coming in with the ideas. But then you had their drummer Benny, who was very, very in touch with how he wanted things to be presented, and they had this relationship the singer and the drummer that worked so well. You might say to yourself, well, what about the bass player, the bass player and the guitar player, the other thing, where were they in the mix? Even though they may not have been vocal, they were vocal with their ideas and all that, and they're the Alexes, we call them. But the band wouldn't have been the band without those dudes, because the guitar player, I always used to say, like, as much as Brian wrote these lyrics and he has this voice, I mean, he could sing the alphabet and you'd just be like if you're into checking out a cool band, Gaslight Anthem, their catalog's amazing. But my point being was, Brian had that ability to write these amazing songs, but without Alex playing guitar,
just because they're not driving the bus.
Yeah, and I feel like every great band, that's the whole thing. It's like every great band, without a person in the band, it changes. And that's why, like, when you see when there's bands that are so amazing, and when someone leaves, it's not the band anymore. It changes the dynamic. Now, obviously, it's like, even like, look at the Foos, with like Taylor passing away, like, Taylor and Dave, were the mom and dad. They were, and it was amazing. And, everyone else in that band is an amazing player. You got Chris Shiflett, just phenomenal guitar. He's a monster. You got Pat Smear, a legend, from the Germs, and, everything in between. And then, you have Rami, who was in the Wallflowers, and then you have their bass player who's in Sunny Day Real Estate, like, just amazing. But like Dave and Taylor had such a great, just this vibe, you had two drummers that were in the same band, and like, that was such a special thing. And, now they got Josh Freese, Josh Freese is by far one of my favorite drummers, the coolest dude in the world. And I think, like, they're probably, as a band, dealing with the dynamics of moving
it's new.
on.
It's going to be different. It's going to be different.
And I think what makes a band like that so cool is they don't try to make it like it's not going to be different. They acknowledge it, and they.
Do you feel bands have more power now to be themselves? Are the suits suits losing?
The suits are gone.
Suits are gone because now you can self-produce and promote, and
the suits are gone because, I mean, and it's, the suits are gone, and the rules, because
it was the suits being like, hey, that first album, that was great. We need another one just like it.
Just like comedy. It's music. The music. That's one of the things that, like, for me, when I went into stand-up comedy, it was, in so many areas, it was similar to being in a band. And I think the reason I was drawn to comedy, like, I had done the music thing, did it, I was signed to Interscope Records, I was on Virgin Records, I was on Caroline Records, like, I had a great run as a singer, and then I decided, you know what, I don't want to play by those rules, I want to start my own record company. And me and my best friend Bill Armstrong, we started our own record company, Side One Dummy, and it was because we wanted to put out music that we felt was important, and we wanted to do it differently. We wanted to have a label ran by artists for artists. We also didn't want it to be about us. A lot of independent labels at that point. You had people like Ian MacKay from DC on Discord. He was an amazing band singer, Minor Threat. Oh my gosh. Then you had Brett Gurewitz from Bad Religion with Epitaph. Then you had Fat Mike from Fat Records, and all these guys were in these huge bands. When we started Side One, me and my partner, he used to always say, he's like, we're just two dudes that really like music. Like, that's all we could offer at the time.
Yeah.
So what I feel like, as I went through the independent music world, what drew me to comedy when I first started doing it, it reminded me of punk rock. I was like, dude, is there really a show going on in this bar? That's cool. Like, hey man, we're going to do a show in a backyard. Whoa, that's punk rock. Like, hey man, we're going to do a show in this guy's living room. Okay. Like, yeah. And what I loved is, like, it was punk rock in the sense that, like, I toured around the country in a band, and sometimes only 25 people came to see the band, and we were stoked, but we also drove 7 hours in a van with 7 dudes. So, like, to do comedy in front of 30 people, I'm like, well, this is a win-win. Like, It's just me in front of 30. I'm stoked. Like, I remember, you go to a show and they're like, yeah, there's only 40 people here. Like, that's rad.
Hell yeah.
I'm in.
That's a show.
That's a show. And what I loved about stand-up, and what I saw with the core, like the things that were similar in punk rock, was all of a sudden when I started doing stand-up, I just saw that there was, like, a change in what people were talking about, the way they were delivering it, and there was no rules. And that really drew me to it. And I was like, okay, I know how to play this game. Like I can be me and do stand up. You know, I'm also going to try to get good at it, and that's going to take some work. But I'm also in a situation where there's these shows popping up everywhere, and I can be a part of those, which is giving me this. It's going to give me the skill set, so that in my head, like I looked at the Improv and the Laugh Factory and the Store is like the bigger venues. Like those were to me, they were the Roxy's, House of Blues, and, Middle East. I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll be able to do those.
We'll get there.
I'll get there.
We'll get there.
And then
but you got to do a lot of shows in backyards first.
Totally. Like when we were kids, house parties.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I'll do that. And then what I loved was what I loved about stand up that the music didn't have was the frequency that you could do it. Like you could do a show Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday. And when I say shows, it's a big word for like 5 people at a sandwich shop. But it was like, hey,
but that's a show.
That's a show.
You learn a lot from that show.
And it's funny because I for people that don't do stand up, and even in my personal life, it wears on the people around me, because I'm like, even to this day, I'll go on the road, and I'll be, let's say I'm out on the road with Jim Brewer, and we just did theaters, 2,500 people Friday night, 1,000 people Saturday night, like I'll post.
What's on Monday night?
No.
22 people
Not
in
even
a bar that didn't know there was going to be a show.
Tuesday, like I'll come home on a Sunday night, and then I'll go do this. I'll come home on a Monday and go do the Store on a Tuesday, and I'll ask to do a spot. I was there last Tuesday, and it was all dudes. It was all men. I was like, did a note go out or something? Because it was all dudes, and it was probably like 10 men or 12 men, and it was just men. And I was like, wow. And it was right after Labor Day, and I'm like, what went wrong with you guys? Like, is this just everyone that just had no one to celebrate with, and you're still holding on to like maybe maybe it's gonna be a good weekend, and it was just but if the people, sometimes in comics know what I'm talking about. Know what I'm talking about. If you could have people in your life that don't understand why you need to go do that. They're like, why?
Most don't.
They don't.
Most really don't.
I hate to say it. I
don't hold it against them. Why would they?
Yeah.
Why would they? I don't expect you to, but at the same time, I just need you to understand that this is what I do.
And it's hard, man.
Yeah.
And I think that attitude comes from punk rock for me. Like for me, I was the guy, like,
What age did you start playing in the band?
The first band I was in, I was 15. I played bass. Some kid, they needed a bass player, and that was like the instrument I could pick up.
And so you're in a garage jamming and learning, and then doing house parties and stuff like that.
And then
did you have jobs throughout this time? Like what?
Well, when I was 15, I was in high school. So like, I worked at Pioneer Chicken. That was my thing. I worked at
a chicken shop.
Yeah, chicken shop, making deep fried chicken, which I was like, people seriously got botulism. There's no way. Like I have a problem with my lefts and my rights. I also have a problem with like I remember the first time I did stand up in Vegas, they had this clock on stage, and the guy's like, watch the clock, and I didn't know if it was counting down or counting forward.
Right. So you didn't know, do I have 5 minutes left, or have I been on stage for 5 minutes?
Exactly. And like, I'm weird with like dates and stuff, like, and one of the things at the chicken place was when you came in, you had to take the chicken from the front and rotate it to the back. Do you know what I'm saying? So like the fresh chicken, so it was like, put the fresh chicken in and then take the chicken that's not fresh and get rid of that. And I would get confused with like, is that chicken fresh or is it not? So dude, all of a sudden I'm deep frying breasts and thighs from like maybe a week ago and serving them to people. And I feel really bad about that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I was bad.
Yeah.
I was bad.
But somebody also hired you. You were a kid that was like, I'll try.
I got hired at Pioneer Chicken because I knew the bro, and I knew a guy that worked there, and then unfortunately the gentleman that owned Pioneer Chicken had a drinking problem. He was an older guy, and he would come in, and he would dust a few beers and then shut his, just like go to sleep. And I was like, and it was the best job ever, because you're like, all right, he's in the bag.
All I gotta do is fried chicken.
And I wanted to ask him, that was probably one of the reasons I asked him, like, well, where's the chicken? Is it fresh or old? And I didn't want to bother him because, He was drinking his beers. But yeah, that was my first gig. And then, then I started playing bass in a band. And then right away, I loved, the bands that were, for me, I was like 7 Seconds and Minor Threat and that like hardcore music, DOA, like that, like I love that. And then I also like loved the English wave that was coming through then. It was like GBH, The Exploited. I was really into like Sham 69, even though they were before all that. I was really into like anthem music. The Ramones were like, they were like the core, they were the gateway drug for me. But like, I really wanted to sing in a band. And I remember,
why?
Cause just like when I would go to shows, back then shows were so inclusive, like, you knew all the lyrics to the songs. The band would start and it would just be like, you go see a band like 7 Seconds, or you go see a band like Agent Orange or something. Like we were just all hanging on every note and every lyric of these people singing. And I remember after a show once, and I've told the story before this, I was the guy that would go to the show, like the doors would open at say, 7 o'clock. And I hadn't discovered drinking at this point in my life. Like I didn't know. And I would like, if doors were at 7 o'clock, and back then it was like $10 for 12 bands. And I would be in the pit for all 12 bands. Like I would they used to do this thing called Day at the Farm. That was like this venue, and they would have like 10 bands play. And I would be in the pit for like 9 hours. Like when you go to work today, imagine just in the pit from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. No break. I loved, and I was into every band. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, they're kind of like, I knew, okay, these guys are from Sacramento, Tales of Terror. They're awesome. Okay. Oh, this band right here, they're from JFA. They're from Phoenix. And they do like surf music, punk rock. Okay. I love them. Oh dude, these guys right here, these guys are gnarly. They're Verbal Abuse. They're from San Francisco, and they used to be like a skinhead band, but now they've all grown their hair out and they're gnarly, and they drink tequila, and they like Metallica. Like I heard one of the dudes might try it out for Metallica. Okay. Like I knew everything about every band. And then when
you were in the pit, you're in it, you love them.
I'm in the pit.
But are you also the guy, like, are you in the room looking around at like, so that's the lighting, that's the look of the audio board, like this is
no,
the like
what I'm doing is this. I'm having full on spiritual moments with the connection between 500 sweaty kids from all over the Bay Area / California that are all disenchanted with what their parents have done, with society, with school, with their relationships, with who they are, where they're going, what they want to do. We're all like-minded. We don't care what you look like, what color you are, what sex you are, who you're with. We don't care about any of that. We just know that everyone in this room right now at this moment is fully on the page, on the same wavelength, here together, and what he's singing or what she's singing, that's our language, and it's going in our heads and it's going through our bodies, and we are just, it's like an orgy minus the sex. It's just like we're in it and we're sweating on each other, dude. I mean, I'm seeing kids that I don't know their name. I don't know his name, but I know he's from Livermore, and every week,
you've seen him.
And every weekend he's here, and I know her because she takes photographs, and she's from Santa Cruz, and she puts out a fanzine, and I remember I bought it from her. That's super cool. And I know that dude over there goes to Stanford, and he never goes in the pit because, he has glasses, but like he bought me a beer because he's 22, and okay, that's rad. And then I know those guys.
These are your like, people, even though you don't know their first name.
I don't know,
but you're still
names.
Connected.
I know those dudes are in a gang because they are from they're from San Francisco down in the Tenderloin, and when I was taking the bus here, they were like, yo, what are you guys about? And they were like threatening to us, and then we called them out and said, if you think you're cool, why don't you go to the punk rock show? And then now they came to the punk rock show, and now they come every weekend. And I know them, and then all of a sudden I'm like, dude, what's up? And like, what are those shoes you have on? Those are Winos. Yeah, I wear Winos too. What's up? Like, all of a sudden, you know, you're like, there's just this universal, and I seriously believed like we're gonna change the world. Like, I remember
From the pit,
dude. Like, I remember the first time GBH came to America, I was on the side of the stage, and they were doing this song called "Give Me Fire," and like everyone is just singing along, and I remember like taking a snap, like I knew even at a young age, like I would take these mental snapshots and be like, this is a special moment in time right now. I remember the first time Minor Threat came through, and I like taking snapshots in my head of like, all the microphones are gone. Ian doesn't have any microphone to sing it, and now the whole entire audience is just singing the lyrics, and he's not even singing in a microphone, and we are just hanging on every single word. Those moments to me were like, they were life-changing, and they were the moments that I always think to myself, that was when I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to connect with people, and I want to try to, I don't think I'll ever be as good as any of those people, but I think I got a chance that I have something to say that could connect with people. And that was, then I was like, that's how I became a singer. I was like, I want to pursue that. I want to try to do that. And then I put together my first band, and it was like, all right, let's go.
And then do you think now that there's a version of that in comedy as
Absolutely.
well?
Absolutely. I really believe like when it's, well, first of all, like I've never, like, this is not the problem, but the issue is I've never done drugs. And like,
never tried.
Yeah. Like, even my son's like, dude, really? Like I'm like, no. Like, I tried weed, and I wanted to smoke weed, and
reset that. Yeah.
Was my hair out of control?
It's just popping up, and I know how you usually rock it. Yeah. There you go.
So like, you know, like I was joking around with my friend the other night in Encinitas.
You were surrounded by drugs
all the time. Speed, coke.
And not once were you ever like, yeah.
The drugs of choice then were speed, which was Black Beauties, and then no one had coke, except that, you know, it would float around like the, you know, rich kids from like Saratoga, you know, parents that like at the time were probably like working for Apple. They had coke. But I didn't know. Everyone thinks I'm on coke all the time because I have allergies. I'm always sniffing, you know, like, and I've had people like, you know, say to people like, what's up with Joe, man? Like, guy, is that guy on coke? Cause
you're high speed.
I'm high speed. But the thing is that back then, you know, there was all these drugs going around, Black Beauties, you know, weed, obviously alcohol and acid, mushrooms, all that stuff. And it never, you know, one of my best friends, you know, the whole time through high school, he took acid like every weekend, and we hung out, and
he's tripping balls and you're just hanging out.
He's tripping balls and I'm just hanging out.
And not once where you're like, I should try it. I'd like to try it. No interest at all.
No, I smoked weed. I freaked out. It wasn't my scene. And then, I remember one time I'm like, I'm gonna do some speed. And I remember
you want speed?
Yeah, I was like, I was gonna do speed, which, you know, everyone told me if I did speed, it would probably mellow me out.
Yeah.
Like Ritalin.
That's why, yeah.
So then I was like, I'm gonna buy speed, and I remember I was in high school, and I went up to this kid, and he had like, you know, he had this like, you know, Iron Maiden t-shirt, this little mustache, and he sold, you know, Black Beauties, and I went up to him one day on a Friday, and I'm like, hey man, I wanna buy some Black Beauties off you, and he's just like, kind of like looked at me like, well, who says I'm selling Black Beauties?
Yeah.
And I was like, dude,
everyone knows.
Sean Gorgona says you're selling Black Beauties. He's like, all right, Sean sent you. Okay, cool. Meet me over, you know, by the backstop after school. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, bring your money. And I'm like, all right. So I go there and I got my $20 or whatever I had, and he gives me like, you know, 5 Black Beauties, and all right, cool. I'm like, he's like, all right, yeah. I'm like, all right, later. No, there's no like, how do you take them?
Yeah.
When do you take them?
And you didn't know.
No, I didn't know. So then I carried around with them. So then on Friday night, I'm like, all right, man, I'm going to this show. I'm taking back a Black Beauty. And then I'm like, I'll wait. I'm going to wait. I'm going to do it tomorrow night when I'm in the city, man. Like, I'm going to the show.
Was there a fear? Was
totally,
it like,
totally.
Yeah.
I remember I had them, and I was like, okay, cool. So I carried them around all day Friday, carried them around all day Saturday. And then I didn't do them on Saturday night. And then I had them on Sunday. And then on Monday, I just was like, you know what, dude, this isn't for me. And then I went up to the kid.
Without even doing it.
I never did them. I just was like, and I was like, you know what, this isn't for me. And then I remember I went and saw the kid, and I walked up to him. I'm like, hey, man. He's like, looks at me like, yeah. And I'm like, hey, yeah, you know those Black Beauties that I bought from you? He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I didn't use them. So like, can I get my money back?
You asked for a refund for drugs. I thought about it, and I just don't think they're for me. So if I'd love to return
these. $20?
Yeah,
$20. He just looked at me. He's like, "F you, get the fuck." You know, like, oh, okay, cool. You know,
that's fun.
So then I gave them to my friend that took acid. I was like, "Do you want these?" He's like,
"Hell yeah, I do."
Took like 3 of them right there. He's like, "Yeah." You know, I don't know. It just wasn't
for you.
It just wasn't my thing. And then, you know, and then I think, like, you know, to go back to your question of like with comedy, it's like, I don't know. Like my addiction, I'm totally addicted to chasing laughs. Like I just chase it, and it's, you know, it's cool, but I also know that it's, you know, like sometimes I'm on a plane and I'm like flying across the country because I'm going to do 20 minutes. And and if I think about it too much, I get a little like, dude, this isn't like, you know, I'm getting paid, but I'm not getting paid like life-changing money, but I'm literally,
I don't know where you're at, but I know, like, for me, like I've done the same thing where I'm flying, you know, like I have a couple dates on the books, and it's like, I'm going to break even.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm not making money on this.
No, dude. I mean,
but I'm going to go do 4 shows in Louisville, Kentucky, and hopefully gain a few more followers, hopefully gain people to buy tickets the next time. But this trip is, if I can break even, just started, success.
So here's the deal. If I manage you,
please do.
Or I manage anybody, you know, bands, comics, you know, and I've had comics all the time. Like, God, I wish you would just manage me. And I'm like, no, man.
You're like, buddy, I'm trying to manage myself.
Yeah, exactly. But we'll see, like with everyone else, I have no problem getting money for you. None. Like, hey,
but for yourself.
But for me, dude, even when I was in my band, I remember the first time we did this show, we sold it out. Everyone, you know, it was an amazing night. And then at the end of the night, the promoter comes to me. He's like, dude, when are you going to come in and settle up? And I was like, oh, I just didn't want to bug you. And he's like, what do you mean? Like,
it's your money.
You guys had 600 people through the door. You guys went into points. I'm like, what's that? He's like, you're getting bonused on what? Here's your money and then some. And I was like, I was always the guy like, oh, wow. Like, you know, even to this day, I'll send emails to comedy bookers and comedy promoters, which, by the way, they are just like, there's a lot of good ones, but man, like they're getting barraged by so many of us.
So much.
And they don't respond, but I'm still the guy that writes the email. Hey, you know, so-and-so, I will use one of their names. Hey, so-and-so, man, I hope you had a great weekend. Hey, I'm going to be out there on the 3rd, and I saw that there's an opening on the 4th. Is there any way that I could and then you just get zilch. You get zero. And, you know, okay, cool, thanks. And it, you know, it's just like, okay, cool. But like, you know, I'll be on a plane and I'll be flying somewhere and I'll be like, wow, man, like I'm flying across the country to perform for 25 minutes and I'm going to break even. And, you know, at the end of the day, like the flight, the time in the air, the time traveling, the time in the car, the time all for the 25 minutes. And the thing is that then I start saying to myself, I'm like, you know, just like you said, I'm like, okay, you know, like I got to do the 25 minutes because you got to do the 25 minutes because I have this amazing opportunity to be in front of this sold out crowd. They're not there to see me. They're there to see the headliner. So I gotta do that. And that's why, when it goes bad, it's so bad because you're like, dude, you know, not only am I here, but you know, there's so much invested to get here, and now I choked.
Doing bad at your local club where you have a 12-minute drive home sucks.
Yeah.
Doing bad knowing you have a 7-hour or 8-hour day of flying home the next day. All the bad you felt for the 12 minutes local, you feel for 8 hours. Oh, it's the same.
Dude, doing bad when you're on the road and you missed a mark, and then you know now
because also in your mind you're like, well, that club's never going to have.
Oh, absolutely. Or you're just like, it didn't connect. Like I remember being out on the road and I've had it happen. You know, it's funny now because I'm better at when those nights happen. I almost immediately know how to shift gears. Like I go backstage and I just surrender to it. I'm like, okay, for whatever reason it is, Littlefield, Wisconsin, or just is not into me, and it's okay, and I've got to move on.
Yeah.
And then
I've recently hit a level where I'll eat. And here's the thing: neither of us eat shit. Not really, but we have shows that are not what they could be.
Yeah,
our bomb is not some bombs, but it's still a bomb to us, right?
Absolutely.
And I've definitely had this thing click where now it's like I'll get off stage and be like, wow. Ate shit for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. That was fun.
Yeah.
Like I was and even in it on stage, I'm like, this is not going well. But you know what?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. I was on the road, and one of the things that, with featuring for different comics, you're going to have different relationships with different guys that you go out on the road. One of the things that's been cool with touring with Jim is, he's super generous human being and just awesome, but he's also like a comic. Like he'll tell you, like, if you're getting ready to go on stage, hey man, I want to let you know, man, this room, it's weird. It's really weird. And I'll be like, really? What do you mean? He goes, the people they're seated weird. The show's super early. They're coming in off the casino. I'm telling you right now, it's a casino show. What do you mean by that? Like, I remember I didn't know what a casino show meant. He goes, a lot of people here, they don't even know who I am. They just got free tickets.
Right. And, they're hanging out because if they sit at the table longer, they're going to lose $200 more, or they can sit here and have a drink.
Exactly. And he goes, and a lot of people, with Jim, it's different in the sense that, like, he'll sell the tickets. So he's like, but what he'll say to me is the room setup is weird, the lighting is weird, the room is weird, and that would really allow me to go, okay, cool, okay, I understand. So where I'm at now is that I would say I would say like 85 to 90% of the time I'm flying home after the weekend going, that was killer. I made some new fans. And I feel like I took some steps forward.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of shows now where while I'm on stage, I'm able to step back and go, oh, I'm working right now. I'm having to work. Like, okay, I just did a bit that crushes. That's a crushing bit. Like that bit crushed last night in Philly. That bit, that's a maneuver that always works.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work. So, okay, game on. Now we're going to have to work.
Yeah.
Like now, and I remember, and now what I love is I'm able to step back, and I swear half the time I'll say what I just said. I'm like, whoa. Okay, I'm just going to let you guys know. Okay, we got game changer. That bit right there crushes. It's not crushing with you guys. And I got to figure out why. And then the crowd will laugh. They'll be like, okay, because they know, like, okay, he's figuring it out.
That's the one thing that I think acknowledging the room. Acknowledging, because they know it. They feel all the feel.
Everyone knows it.
If you and they feel when you're uncomfortable, they feel when you pull back, which is why getting your antenna tuned in, that like when they're pulling back, tell them, hey, no.
Yeah.
Don't pull back. We're all here. It's fine. You're fine.
Yeah.
We can laugh at this.
Totally.
I did a show. It was a clip I put out where like some guy snuck his, like, it was here in town. It was a bar show and it was packed. It was 150 people, and some guy like snuck in his like 13-year-old kid, and everyone knew. Everyone sees a kid because they just happen to be sitting in the middle.
Yeah.
And everyone is not laughing because they're like, and it's because of this kid. They're not laughing because I half my jokes are dirty because I love telling dirty jokes. And they're like, ooh, what about the, and I literally was like, hey, if you don't laugh, he can't.
Yeah.
Don't ruin his show.
Yeah.
Just because there's a 13-year-old kid here.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Let this be a moment where this kid goes, I remember I went to a comedy show at 13.
Yeah.
And they were talking about A, B, and C, and it fazed me, but it was awesome.
Yeah. And what was funny, as soon as I said that, they all laughed at that and relaxed a little. And then the dad actually said, don't worry, he's laughing. And I was like, yeah, he's the only one, he's the only one with balls in this room.
Yeah.
Will you guys get on board? Like, let this kid just
you got to acknowledge it, man.
And
when you call it out like that, I always feel the audience knows. It goes back to that moment that I was saying, when I was, a 15-year-old punker in the pit. It's like, we all know that we're all connecting. And with comedy, the audience knows if...
I don't think they consciously know. I don't think that's the one thing. Like, I look at it, I stand in the back before I'm about to go up, and I look at the room, and and you know, I don't know, I've sat through a couple thousand shows now or whatever. So it's the kind of thing where I can look at a crowd, and by how they're sitting and how they're breathing and how they're moving, people don't realize, but like if you sit in the back of the crowd, it'd be really interesting actually to do a time lapse of an audience. Just to see, because I know for a fact there are times, especially like I tell longer stories, I tell more, and I've had other people tell me, they're like, you know, one, I've had comics tell me, they're like, I don't know how you go a minute and a half without a laugh. That would drive me crazy. And it doesn't happen often, but I have stories, or I'll go down a tangent and whatever. And what you'll see is that the audience, they're in.
Yeah.
They just aren't laughing, which is fine, but they're listening. They're silent. They're there. And you'll just see them literally leaning in.
Yeah.
Punchline.
Yeah.
Relax back.
What's happened though is
lean in.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing is like you can see an audience where like I don't think they realize that they've become one, because that's what a good audience is. A good audience is literally group mind consciousness together.
But what you've done though, I think is the reason they're able to, you know, listen to you for a longer period of time is they trusted you.
Yeah.
So you got the laughs at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I always say to
you
people,
put them at
it's
ease,
a bank account,
and they feel safe.
It's a bank account.
Yeah.
When you go on stage, that's why like I'm a fan. A lot of comics, you know, nowadays aren't about, not a lot, but some people aren't about this. My thing is like as soon as I get that mic in my hand, and the stage is, you know, mine, I'm like, all right, I have in my head, you know, 30 to 40 seconds to get that first laugh. And a lot of other people, you know, they're not into that. And I'm like, the reason I want to do that is because I want the audience to go, we have a bank account together with Joe, and we don't know who he is, and the bank account gets better on our end when there's laughs in it. So the more laughs that he gives us in our bank account,
you're making deposits.
He's a financial advisor at this point, and you know what? We're going to trust him. So when I do a longer bit, then, and just like you said,
right, but you've already made a few deposits. They're like, we're good. That's fine.
So that's why when you say the audience, and I love how you say, like, you know, people say, man, like, you know, how can you go a minute and a half without a laugh? That's because the audience at that point is with you. Yeah. Now, if you came up on stage and you did 2 minutes and there's no laughs, I don't know if that trust is going to be there.
Yeah, I know that I have a weird habit, and I do it. And I do it almost on every single show, and I've done it forever, where I go up and I love letting the energy die. I will literally like, hi, hello. Yeah,
you totally. Well, what you do is I think you're resetting the table. I don't think the energy dies.
Well, I know, sure.
I think you reset it,
but
you do that. Though.
Yeah. And
I'm going to go the other way. If there's energy and like someone's had a crushing set, I'm going to let that energy, and then I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let it, and then I'm going to definitely.
You're going to ride that.
I'm going to ride it because it's like a wave to me.
I don't know why.
Keep it going.
I don't know when it started, but I think there's this part of me. It's like you don't get that. This is like we're running material. We're doing this stuff. You can't ride that energy. Like, one, it's in there. Dude, they have it. They're ready.
Look at Chappelle though. That he's made his career out of that. I mean, like that was the thing that separated him from everyone, is that he came up on stage. You could have so many comics up and but when he came up, he definitely it's everything stops.
Yeah,
and it's
he lights a cigarette. He takes a moment.
Now, but he was stopping and doing that before he was Chappelle. You watch now you watch those old videos, and his the way he speaks, the way he carries himself is like, check it out. Like, here we go. You ready?
Yeah.
It's like, it's like a ball player coming in, out of the dugout or out of the pitching, way in center field. They come in, it's like there's either gonna be guys that start ripping in, fastballs and just trying to, go for it, or, there's gonna be a guy that goes up.
It's gonna set his own pace.
Set his own pace.
Yeah.
But that's what I love about stand up. Everyone has their.
Yeah. And it all can work. It can all work. And if
I think it changes a lot though. I don't know about you. Do you ever go through like phases? Like I'm in a phase right now where I want to rapid fire. Like I'm in a rapid fire stage.
Just
like I want
joke.
I want it to be like, I want joke, pause. Joke, pause. Joke. Like I want I don't want any words out of my mouth that don't have a reason or a rhyme. I want to trim the fat. Like I want my set to be like one of those steaks that you see at the market where you're like, I mean, it looks good, but it's just so healthy. And then you see that in New York with all the marble and just, and I feel though there's different times though, like sometimes I do want to have some I always want to be loose, but like right now I'm just into this rapid fire. And I don't know if I'm into the rapid fire thing because I had someone say to me a while ago, you know, like there's this thing where everyone's just like kind of slower and like that. And I was like, I don't want to be like that. Like I want to come out and I want to tell jokes and I don't want to have an attitude. I don't want to waste the audience's time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
I see a lot of comics,
but I also think that
waste time.
Yeah,
with
I mean, and that was one of my biggest issues. Like back when I was doing open mics and stuff, was like you get these guys that would come up, and you know, like not everyone gets on the open mic. Especially like you're at like, you know, some of the clubs are like they pull your name out of the thing.
Totally.
And some asshole goes on stage. He's like, oh, what are we going to talk? I don't even know.
I can't stand that.
And I'm like, dude, fuck you.
Yeah.
You are not respecting this space.
Or my time.
Or these people's time or my time or the 12 other comedians that came hoping to get up that have shit they were prepared to work on. Yeah. And you're up there like, oh, I didn't even think about what to do. What should I?
And can I tell you right now, you know, I was out in New York in August and I was at Gotham and it was such a great night, man. I was like, Mark Norman was there, who I love, you know, and
he's so funny.
Yeah. And like,
he's the machine.
Dude, he's a machine, bro.
He's
the
just,
guy
just
shows
sitting
up,
behind a fucking machine gun, just joking it.
The guy shows up and I forgot there was another comic on there that's coming to the store that Ellen was like, hey, I saw on your show, so-and-so's on this show. You got to watch him. He crushed. East Coast guy. He's coming to the store.
Yeah. She pointed him out last night. I don't know his name.
Yeah. Dude, that guy was amazing. But it was a great show. And there was all these different comics on it. But Mark came in and it was like, you know, the Netflix special came out. And I know Mark from, I met Mark. I forgot where we did show. I did shows with him, and then at one point, he came to Irvine, and I hit him up, and I said, "Hey, man, do you have a feature?" And he's like, "No," and I featured for him in Irvine, and it was a while ago, and like pre-pandemic, like this is a while back, and he, what I loved about it was, one night on Saturday, you know, he has his 2 shows Friday, he crushes. Saturday, I'm there. We do the first show, or I'm sorry, the first show sold out. Early show Saturday sold out. And we can't start the show because he's not there yet. And I'm like, you know, like, I don't know, you know, I know him, but I don't know him like well enough, like
to be like, hey man,
yeah, where are you? You know? And I think I might text him and I go, dude, we're waiting. He's like, oh, I'll be there in a second. And then he comes in, sorry, man, oh, God, comedy. You know, he's like, sorry. And I'm like, he's like, oh, I was just doing an open mic over in Santa Ana. And I go, what?
He's doing a sold out show and he went to do a mic.
Dude, I go, you're doing an open mic. And I remember at that point, from that moment on, I remember right then realizing, okay, this is a different cat. Like, whoa, this is a different dude. Like he just, like you just said, all the way through my mind, it was like, there's 500 people in this room waiting to see you, and you were doing an open mic in Santa Ana at like
to 24 people at a laundromat or some shit. Like who knows?
And it was a game changer for me because it really inspired me. And then with all the success he's had and everything he's doing, you know, I'm like, that's why, you know. And then when he shows up at Gotham, his Netflix special has just come out. He shows up at Gotham, and he goes up on stage, and he has the pad of paper, which I'm not a fan of, like the people with the pad of paper or the phone. I don't like it. But he goes up there, and it's like he goes right into it. Like, okay, so boom, new material. And just, okay, and he's going over, okay, that bit's not working. But at the same time, he's doing crowd work. Like, okay, I got to remember this guy likes that joke, but that guy don't like that. So you're a homo, you know, whatever. You know, you're like,
I was gonna say it's Mark Norman, so he's like gay, fatty, comedy,
yeah. And I'm like, but he's killing it. And then when he left, and then he was coming out to Balboa and did this sold out show. But my point being was that type of work ethic is reminds me so much of punk rock, because that's how it was when you were in a band. It was like you practiced Tuesday and Thursday, you did the show every weekend, you went to Sacramento to play for no one, you got burned by the promoter in Reno, you got on the tour that took you to Texas, all the shows got canceled, it didn't matter because you got the one show in El Paso. And I don't know, I'm in love with it. And what I love about stand-up is I love it so much, but I'm so addicted to the laugh.
Yeah.
I'm just addicted to it. It's like I can't make fun of a person that's into drugs and go, oh my God, what a loser.
Because you're like, no, I'm addicted.
You got to go to the park to score your dope. Oh my God, I would never do that. And I'm like, oh, so you got to go to your sandwich shop on Wednesday, and in between subs being ordered, do your 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I have to.
Why? Because I got to know if this bit works.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and
it's not different.
And it's just, I don't know. I love it so much. And I think, I love talking about it with comics. I love, I'm a weirdo.
The comic hang's the best hang.
I love the comic hang.
It's the best hang.
I love going to a venue and, the energy that's in the room that night, like I'm so grateful that I get a tour in these places and you get to go and it's like, the ushers are seating people and you can feel like, whoa, there's a vibe here, and you're putting the house music on and you're like, okay, here we go. I love all that stuff.
I love going to a new venue and crushing.
Oh,
there's something about being like, this room's never seen me.
Yeah.
This room doesn't know my jokes. These
and all that goes to your head
it.
is, why didn't I film?
That's why I film everything now.
Yeah. I just started. I got like, I nerded out. Like I bought, do you know Big Irish J?
Yeah.
So Irish J and I did a weekend together. This was so weird. Irish J and I did the Grand Comedy Club.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, Irish J, Grand Comedy Club. Guess what weekend they gave us? Cinco de Mayo. I'm like, what's the owner's name?
Adam.
I'm like, Adam. So let me dude, out of all the guys that you could put in here, you put on the Italian and the Irish guy together on Cinco de Mayo and Escondido.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, but
it went well.
It went
well.
It
did. Yeah.
Oh no, it was great, but I just thought it was funny. I thought it was funny. No, I love Adam. He's
great.
Yeah, he's great. They're moving their club too, I guess.
I talked to him recently. Yeah, I guess I don't think there's any details yet, but he wants to. But I guess the lease is coming up or something.
What I love about Adam too is it's like he'll be like, hey, I want you to come up and do the show. I mean, there's no money. There's no money. I mean, there's no money at all. And you're like, bro. And then you go and do the show, and after the show, he gives you a lot of money.
Yeah,
you're like,
sometimes,
and
sometimes they're not. And you're like, hey, just keep that. Like I saw the room. Like it's okay.
And you feel so bad because he wants to give you a lot of money.
Like all he wants is for the place to be packed and to pay people.
And and anytime it is packed, he gives you.
He does.
He gives you real money.
He gives you money.
But
but that's the weird part. It's again, especially to outsiders, and even when you start. Like I remember when somebody giving me $10. To do a bar show on a Thursday. Was like the greatest. You're giving me. Like I have in my office, I have the first check I ever got from the American Comedy Co. for an Al Madrigal weekend, and I was like a year in.
Yeah, I remember the first time I got $25.
Yeah, but like when I had an official check with my name on it that said for combat, like I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, I went out to whenever I don't get to go as much as I want, but I think I'm going to do more of it because I finally kind of know enough people that I can call ahead and go, hey, I'm going to be in New York. Is there any way I could do this and that? I remember I went out one time in New York and I only did like 3 spots in one night.
Yeah.
And dude, I had like real money that like the next day I was set for like lunch and coffee and I was like, this is rad.
And and in your mind you're like, can I do a guest set? And they're like, yeah, those are paid.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, that was like when I went to Austin and I did a San and Derek show at the Mothership.
How was the Mothership? I haven't gone.
It's perfect.
Really?
It's perfect. I've been there twice.
Whose show did you do?
So Asan Ahmad and Derek Poston, they have a show.
Derek?
Dude, they're doing amazing.
Okay.
They are doing so much comedy because Austin is exploded. And that was even before the Mothership. And before the Mothership.
Do I have this right? Because I love Derek. And did I meet Derek at Madhouse?
Yeah, he used to run. He booked the Madhouse back when it was on the roof years ago.
Shoot, I remember that.
And he like turned it into, and it was very polarizing in the scene because this is what I'll say about Derek. He will tell you exactly what he thinks of your comedy. And if he doesn't like it, which it doesn't mean it has to be his kind of comedy. That's where I will say whatever. Yeah. But if he's like, you're not funny, he doesn't give a shit. Yeah. I don't give a shit how long you've been in the scene. I don't give a shit where you get up. I don't care where you're a regular. I don't give a shit. But the lineup will be a good lineup.
Yeah, I remember.
And he got everyone paid.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember meeting him back then. And then him and I became friends, and then I think like I started coming to San Diego, and then I ran into him at Madhouse, and then I saw him like, you know, before he bailed to like Austin, and but he was always super cool, dude. Not that anyone's gonna care. How rad was the Madhouse when it was on the roof?
It was different.
Oh my God.
It was different.
Dude,
it was so, in the pit, that round pit, because that's all you needed. If the pit was full or even half full, you had a show.
I remember I had sets there that were like game changing sets.
I mean, that's where I cut my teeth. Yeah. And Robert, the owner of the club, is so supportive of local comics. He's been, and by that, it's stage time, and everyone has their complaints. Everyone has their whatever about the club. But it's like, this is the place where Robert was like, get on stage, get on stage every night. Like he went 7 nights a week for the open mic. He was which helped the scene and hurt like it was both. It was a double-edged sword of like, it helped the scene but hurt the hang a little. Yeah. But then the hang like migrated to like every night. You're going to end, no matter where you are, you're going to end up at the Madhouse. You're going to be inside. You're going to do the open mic if you weren't on the show. And then you're going to stand in the parking lot with 35 comedians shooting the shit. It starts out as one giant circle. Yeah. And it's like all the different classes. Like this was like the first like couple years I was in. It's like we were our little class, and there were the guys that were 2 years ahead of us, and the guys that had been around 6 years, and you know, and then like once we were 2 years in, there was like the new class. But it would start as everyone as one group, and there'd be like 2 joints going this way, 2 pipes going this way, and it was and then like you'd break off into your little group, and like it was so crazy. You're on a rooftop. Yep. Parking garage.
See, I never got to be a part of that because I was coming down from LA for that. So I started in LA, and it's funny that you bring this up about Madhouse because I started in LA, and it was, you know, I started in the place you shouldn't start. You know?
Should not.
And it's like I started at the Improv, like the only
doing the mic.
No, just I kind of got, you know, it was weird. I got in there through. So when I started, I did this show. I wrote a one-man show, and I did this one-man show, and I had never been in a comedy club ever, and I was like, I was on the radio, and I would always tell stories because, you know, my comedy is based in storytelling, and I would tell these stories, and I was telling stories about moving in with my dad. I was telling stories about, you know, how my mom sent me to go live with my dad, punk rock, and how this changed my life, and how this and that, you know, just all the kind of stuff, and it was all with photographs and music and all stuff. So I started doing
like a full produced,
it was a full-on show.
It
was a one-man show. It's called California Calling, and someone booked me at this club in Hollywood called it was I'm spacing on the name of it, but it was on Sunset Strip, and they put me in the basement, and that was the first place I did it, and there was a really good turnout because everyone was like, you know, they're like, oh well, Joe, you know, doing this storytelling thing, and anyone that knew me was like, that's what you should be doing, you know. And I remember
they're like this singing thing.
Yeah.
Well, have you tried talking into a microphone?
It was funny because like then when I started doing stand-up and all this stuff, people were like, oh my God, I loved you in a band, you were always so funny. And I was like, I wasn't trying to
not
be
what
funny.
You want to hear about your band.
I wasn't trying to be funny.
Your band was hilarious.
Yeah, you're like, what? So anyway, so when I started doing this, so then the woman Emily, who at the time she's the main booker at the store.
That Emily. Yeah.
So Emily was at the time, she's a full music head, and she came to see that night at the Key Club downstairs in the basement, or saw a video, something like that. I meet her or get a call from her because I'm starting to do a residency over at the Largo, and that was even crazier. I didn't know what the Largo was about. The owner of the Largo, this guy named Flanagan, he's like, hey, you know,
your one-man show?
Yeah, one-man show. He's like, I want to book you a residency. So he booked me a residency at the Largo, and I was there like,
that's unheard of.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. And I started doing that.
Do you still do Largo now?
No.
Why not? You know the guy.
I moved. Yeah, you know what ended up happening was like, well,
doesn't matter. Finish your story.
So anyway, so Flanagan, you know, gave me this huge start, and then Emily, who was booking the Improv at the time, was like, hey, would you ever want to do your one-man show at the Improv? And I was like, sure, that'd be amazing. I'd never even stepped foot into the Improv my entire life. I'd lived in Hollywood at that point 20 years. I've driven by it. I'd never seen one show there. So then I go down there, and we put tickets on sale, and I sold it out. And I was like, oh my God. So then Emily was like, that was great. and she's like, hey, and I'll never forget. She's like, hey, would you ever want to come back and like, you know, like do stand up? And I was like, well, wasn't that stand up? She's like, nah, not necessarily.
Yeah.
And Flanagan said that to me too. He's like, that's not really stand up. You're doing storytelling. And then I remember, and Flanagan at that point, I remember once he's like, hey, you know, I'm like, I want to do stand up. He's like, all right, come back. We have a smaller room, but you can't bring your photographs. You can't bring music.
Yeah.
And I'll give you like 10 minutes, but you just got to be you with a mic. And I remember I went up and I did it, and he's like, okay, you can do it. He goes, it was bad. It was really, you know, it's not.
But it takes some bad to get to the good.
But he goes, okay, if you want to do that, it's a different game. And I remember it I was like, whoa, no photos, no. I was like,
no crutches.
I was really leaning on the, you know, for all intents and purposes, it was like props. You know, I was leaning on it,
leaning on the production.
So then I came back to the improv, and then Emily said, why don't you come in here and I'll put you up. And I was like, really? And I remember she put me up on a Thursday night after Damon Williams. And it was like
Damon Wayans?
Wayans.
Damon Wayans or his son?
Damon.
Holy
the main guy.
shit.
The main guy.
Holy shit.
The main dude.
Yeah. The
main dude.
Yeah. Damon.
Like the guy.
Yeah.
And I remember it was like, boom, boom, boom. Okay, we're going to bring Joe Sib up. And I had to go up, and she's like, yeah, just do like 7 minutes. And like, I was like, I'd been doing an hour of storytelling. I'm like, 7. Like, how do you even get the mic out of like 7 minutes? Like, what? You know, it's like, you know, it was like, I guess I could do that. All right. And I went up, but I had jokes. I had my vibe. And I remember I got done, and a buddy of mine that night, it was my first spot. And this guy named Charlie from the band Goldfinger, and he's the guitar player. And he came, and before I went, he's like, dude, you're doing it. Like when he was so like, he was into it almost more than me. He was like, dude, because he loved comedy, and he's like a comedy nerd. And he's like, dude, you don't even understand this lineup you're on. I'm like, yeah, I know. He goes, and you're going up after, dude, this is gnarly. All right, good luck. And I went up, and they brought me on, and I did my 7 minutes, and I got some laughs. I didn't eat a bag of dicks. Right. I got through it.
Yeah.
And when I got back, I go back over to the little area, and I'm standing there, and he runs over. He's like, dude, you did it. Like, dude, like it was good. Like it wasn't great, but like you got some laughs.
It was good.
Like, it wasn't so bad that, you know, you stood out as terrible.
Sometimes you just do the job. Sometimes your job is just hey.
But I don't even remember it.
Don't ruin the show.
So like, what? And then
I blacked out my entire first time. Yeah. I did like 12 minutes by accident because I didn't know where the light was, and I was only supposed to do 8. Yeah. And I literally have almost no memory of that time because it was such an in the moment craziness. Yeah. No clue.
Yeah, I remember I got done. And I walked out, and then and Emily was like, hey, that was great. Okay, cool. And like in my head, I'm like, what's next? You know, like, what do I do now? You know, and she's like, all right, well, like, you know, like if you want to come back and do it again, we'll and then I went to like that guy. She's like, it went from like, oh, this was so great, to she was like, okay, now you're in the mix with everyone. Good luck, you know. And I was like,
but she was like, call, like you got passed.
Oh,
like
dude,
she was like, call in.
So cool. And then I remember she got let.
Are you in at the store now? She's there.
No, so check it out. So here's the deal.
What did you?
I'll tell
do?
you my story. No, I'll tell you my story about the store. So what ended up happening was, at the time, I had younger kids. My kids were like, you know, like 6 and 9 or something. And I remember I went to the store because my relationship with the store was Polly. So me and Polly, when I was in my band Wax, there was a movie called Biodome, and my band Wax is the
Biodome.
band in Biodome.
Wait, you're on stage in that movie?
If you watch Biodome, we're the
dude.
band.
You watch
we destroy
Biodome,
the Biodome. We destroy the Biodome. My band.
You're the band playing the party.
We're the band playing the party that destroys the Biodome.
And you're the lead singer of that band.
I'm the lead singer of that band, Wax.
Dude, I watched that movie. We had it on VHS non-stop.
There you go.
That movie
with
was
Baldwin, Stephen Baldwin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Polly. So what ends up happening is that Polly, when I'm in that movie, Polly was just super cool to the band and super cool to me. And then after I did the band thing, every couple of years, Polly and I would reconnect, and he would like I remember when he was doing like Polly's dead or Polly's not dead or whatever. He needed music for that, so he called me up. Hey man, would Side One Dummy? You know, could you turn me on to some bands? I don't have any money, and you'd be okay. And we'd try to send him some music, and okay. And then I'd run into him, and he was just always like, Joe Sib, what's up? He was always just cool.
Yeah.
And just always super, super sweet.
Which I've always heard that. I've never heard anyone really say negative things about Polly.
Polly is so cool that like I was over Polly, like, I mean, you know, I'm over in Maui and it was last Christmas and I'm at this place called Monkey Pot and I'm with my girl and we're hanging out and we're sitting at the bar and it's Christmas, you know, it's like 2 days before Christmas and it's just this festive atmosphere and you're in, you know, Maui and, you know, it's just so beautiful. And, you know, I won't even get into the fires, which is such a tragedy. But anyway, we're there and we're just having an amazing time. And I'm sitting this way and she looks over my shoulder. She's like, oh my God. She's Hall, your boy's here. And because that's what she always says to me when like, and I'm like, my boy. She's like, Pauly Shore's sitting like right behind us. And I'm like, really? And, you know, I've had like a Mai Tai at this point and like, I'm like, well, you know, and I've told her I know him.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're together and I'm like, okay, now I'm on the hot seat. Like, okay, like, cause that's her all right. Like, here you go. Like, you know, and I'm like, oh man. And I remember I turn around and you can kind of feel an energy in a restaurant when like a celebrity's there, like everyone's like,
yeah.
You're hearing like a lot of sure, Pauly Shore's over there. Okay, cool. Oh my God, yeah, okay, cool. And I remember I stand up and I turn around and I don't even get all the way around where his table's right there. And he just, Joe Sib, what's up, buddy? He's like, hey. And I get up and I walk over to him and his brother's with him. And I'm like, oh man, man, what are you doing here? Yeah, how long are you here for? And we just start talking and he was so cool. He goes, I want to meet your girlfriend. He walks over, gives her a hug. Okay, cool. And then they eat their dinner and we eat ours. And then afterwards he comes over and, you know, just says, what's up? Hey man, you know, let's try to hang while we're here on the island. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then he went. And then before he left, I'd send him a text. Hey man, it was great running into you. And then, you know, happy new, you know, he's just always been just super, super cool, you know? And, he was the reason that, you know, over the years, I started doing that one-man show. When I did it at the Improv, somehow or another, he found out about it. And I got a call from him one day and he's like, hey man, I heard you're doing like hey buddy, you know, I heard you're doing
because you had already done the movie.
I did the movie. This is years later. I'm doing California Calling. And he basically says to me like, hey man, he's like, my mom, you know, the main room, you know, the original room, not the wait, is the
OR is the little one, the original room.
What's the
with
one
the
with
window?
The big stage?
That's the main room.
Okay, so the main room, he goes, the main reason my mom built the main room is for a show like yours. She like music, video, like the whole thing. Like that's why she built that room. You need to do your show there. And I was like, wow. I'm like, okay. I do my show there. I sell it out.
That's 300 seats.
Yeah, sell it out, pack it. Now, I don't know at the time any comics. I don't know anyone. And it goes great. And I remember after the show, that was when I was like, okay, over the next couple months, I'm like, I really want to start doing stand-up. And I did the spot at the Improv. And then I remember it was January and I reached out to Pauly. And this was before, at that point, this guy named Dean was booking it, or the main guy that got let go. And this other guy named Dean was kind of helping out Pauly. And, I forgot the booker's name, but you know, Emily's not there, nothing like that. And I remember I reached out to Pauly. I said, hey man, you know, like he's like, you know, he had known that I did the California Calling there. And it was a couple months later. And I said, hey, I want to do stand-up now. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, so like, can you help me maybe at the store? You know, like what would I do? And he goes, all right, call this guy, Dean, he'll hook you up with like who you need to talk to. And I'm like, okay, cool. So then, and he goes, and you should come up and hang out one night. And I go, all right. And he goes, yeah, cause it's all about the hang. And I'm like, all right. And he goes, I'll introduce you to this guy.
What year is this?
He goes, I want to introduce you to a guy. His name's Sandy. And it was Sandy Danto. Do you know Sandy Danto?
No.
Oh yeah. He opened for Pauly for years. He's
okay.
A really, really funny comedian. And, so this is 15 years ago. So it's whatever year that is, it's 15 years ago. And I remember it was January 7th. Or I went up there like at the beginning of January. And I remember I go up and it was like a scene out of the movie, dude. Sandy Dantos, he's like, hey man, you're friends with Pauly? And he's like, okay. And you got to know Sandy. He's like, he looks like John Belushi. Like, anyone, you know, he's just and he's a super sweet guy. And I remember he's like, okay, so like, here, I'll walk you around. And he's walking me around the store, introducing me to comics. Looking back on it, it is so lame. Like it's just so I didn't know.
You didn't know.
I didn't know. And Sandy kind of felt like I think Sandy was like, you know, Pauly says you're cool. I don't know who you really are.
But just walking you around the
Dude,
yeah.
walking me around. And like, I remember I met Dean Del Rey and it was just like, yeah, you know, like he's just like.
Comedy is like, is such a weird space because I don't go to the store. I've been up there I've been in town 11 years doing comedy, 11 years. I had friends that moved up and I've been to LA 4 times.
Yeah.
And I've done the open mic twice. I did a show in the Belly Room because my buddy was producing it not too long ago. So fun. But in my mind, I was like, one, this isn't worth the drive. Even if I get on the open mic doing 3 minutes in the OR to nobody, this isn't helping me. This isn't whatever. But sitting in the back of the room and watching, I'll do that all night, every night. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, like, I don't want people to see me here if I'm not performing.
Yeah, I didn't think that.
I don't want... But I had already been in a few years at this point.
So at this point, though, you got to remember, so I go up there, or I'm there at the store.
And you've already sold out the main room.
Yeah, I've already sold the main room, but, you know, that didn't mean shit to anyone there. And all of a sudden, he introduced me to, and I remember, I'll never forget it, man. It was like, he introduced me to Dean Del Rey. And like the reason he introduced me to Dean Del Rey is like, Dean Del Rey's music guy, you're a music guy. And Dean's like, hey, buddy, like, hey, so, I'm like, oh, hey, what's up? I remember Dean asked me, so how many spots you done this year? And I was like, I'm like, how many spots? And it was like January 5th. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, and he'd already been, he's like, Dean's a machine. He's like, I was up to San Francisco. I did it. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. I didn't even know what that,
but that's comics. And that's the thing is we do judge each other by how many spots.
Yeah, dude.
Exactly.
I didn't even know.
You had no business being introduced to these people.
Dude, none. And
it didn't help you.
And everyone that I was getting introduced to, they were looking at me. They were just like they were looking at me like a gnat. Just like, what do you, like, you know what? They were looking at me like, what are you going to do? Like, what do you, I'm in my head. I'm about to go up here. Get out of my face. But they were being polite. And then the one guy that totally hung out with me that night that probably picked up on, like, when you just don't know where to put your hands because you're just like, was because
you don't belong there.
Was Brody.
Wow.
And he goes, Joe Sib, and I'm, in that Brody voice, and I didn't.
Which
know.
he's a local guy, so did he know your bands and this stuff? Because he was big into music.
No, you ready for this? He knew about I don't know how he picked up on it, but like I had this joke about PMA. I used to go, I used to have my opening joke when I started doing stand-up. The opening bit that I had was, "What's up, man? I'm all about positive mental attitude. PMA, man. PMA all day. I'm so positive that I just got our family a brand new dog, and I decided to name our family dog Fuck Yeah." Just so when I go out to yell for him in the morning, everyone's like, "That guy's stoked. Fuck yeah, fuck yeah." And Brody heard me do that bit. So we had this, and he's a positive guy.
Positive,
he goes, PMA, positive mental attitude. Joe Sib, I love, and then he when someone's nice to you, then I just clung to him that night. And I just was like, okay. And I watched everyone. And then Sandy introduced me to this woman named Cindy. They used to call her Crazy Cindy. And he's like, he's all, hey, Crazy. He's all, Cindy, this is Joe. Pauly wanted me to, and then she's like, hey, so you're a comic, right? And I go, yeah. She's all right, what do you think about, what are you doing Thursday night? And I'm like, I don't know. She's like, all right, I got a show in the Belly Room. Bring 5 people. You're on the show. And I'm like, yeah. And,
nice.
I didn't know being a bringer was lame. I'm like, dude, I can bring more than 5. I can bring like 10.
They're like, great. You're in.
I remember I brought 10 people. And then that night, I remember she lines everyone up on the wall. And we're all sitting backstage. And there was this comedian that I became really good friends with named Seabass. And he was the guy, like, you have your first guy you like do a show with, and we just like hung together. Yeah. And she goes down, I'll never forget, they go down the wall. There's 10 of us. How many people you got on the list tonight? I got 5. Okay, boom. How many people you got on the list tonight? I got 6. Okay, cool. How many people you got on the list? Well, it's my birthday. My dad's here. How many people you got on the list? Well, I got 2. You're not going up. How many people? And I'm like, whoa, how many people you got on the list? I got 10. Can you work Sunday? Yeah. Boom. You're on that show too. And I was like, wow, okay. And I remember I go up and I had an okay set, and then I came back on Sunday, and then all of a sudden it was like, I was like, oh, I get it. Like, I can only do time every time I bring someone.
So I can make you money. Yeah.
Exactly.
Nobody, like, it's so funny. Like, the bringer show thing is, they prey on new comics.
Totally.
And all the comics that have been around have already made that mistake. But nobody really tells you. You have to like learn that one on your own. and you do a couple bringer shows, and then you're like, why?
And that night, I'll never forget. I'm at the store, and that night, dude, they let one of the door guys go up. You know, like it's his time, and dude, he gets into it with the audience. Like, and I'd never seen I'd seen people kind of go at it, but dude, the door guy who was doing a set going against the audience, and like it got gnarly, and like that energy, like now. I feel that, you see that energy all the time. You're like, oh, okay, it's going down that road. But it was like, you know what it was the equivalent of, dude? It was the same equivalent of the first time I went to see a band and a pit started. I was like, whoa, what's going on? What the fuck is going on? Like, so when these two guys started going at it, and the guy's like, yeah, and he knew, and it was a comic that had chops too. So like, he was like, bum, 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 bum. And I'm like, how is he even thinking that stuff? Like, how did he get that out? Oh my God, he shut them down. Well, they're kicking a person out. And it was like, and then they just went back to the show. Like, did a fight almost break out? And now we're doing another comic. Like, it was just now I'm like, yeah, the fight almost broke out. Yeah, the guy fell down.
That guy needs to go.
Yeah. Like, but I hadn't seen comedy get physical like that, and I was like, whoa. And I remember, so then I'm trying to get into the store, and then I just realized, that it wasn't meant for a dad that had a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. It was just like I couldn't do the time. I couldn't.
You can't do the hang.
And I also like I had some friends that were really good comics there that were very, very popular. And one guy in particular, and he pulled me aside one night and he just said, he's like, Joe, he's like, man, I love you. And he's like, this isn't your place. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, it's just not this isn't your vibe. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, it's just like basically what he was kind of saying to me was like, dude, like at this point, dude, everyone that's up here, we live, breathe. It's like a surfer. It'd be like paddling out.
We're addicts.
Yeah.
And this is our junkie house.
And he was like basically saying, you don't want any part of this. Like, where you, and I remember
this will ruin the rest of you.
Yeah. And I was like, and I was like, why? And he's like, exactly that. That's a great analogy. He was like, you don't want any of this, man. Like everyone up here right now this is all they do, live, breathe. You got your record company, you've got your life, you've got a wife, you've got kids. And I remember he said to me, God, looking back at it now, I should have listened to him because I'm divorced and I don't have the record company anymore. God.
Yeah. And you're an addict. Yeah. And you're an addict. The drug got you.
Got me. And that's so true. And I was like, really? And I remember he said to me, he goes, you know where I think you got to go, man? You got to go down to the Laugh Factory.
Just a different.
Yeah. He goes, it's a different energy. Jamie will like you. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah, because you're happy, you're positive, you're really.
Yeah, that was not the story. And you're talking, I'm trying to do the math. So you said 15 years ago. So 2013 minus 5. So we're at 2008.
2008, 2009, something like that.
And that was the dark time at the store.
Yeah, I guess, And I was like, yeah, because it hadn't popped off yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't the Rogan era.
Right, he hadn't come back yet. Yeah, this is,
And I remember I was just like, okay. And I remember I went and then I got kind of backdoored at the Laugh Factory because I was on the radio and KLOS lost their connection lost their time with the Laugh Factory, and they were looking for a new radio station to sponsor the Laugh Factory, and I had a show on there, and the woman that ran the station, Julie Pilot, they got a phone call and they had a meeting and they were like, hey, the Laugh Factory wants to know if 98.7 wants to sponsor, and what do you guys think? And she just goes, yeah, we have a comic on our staff. Yeah, we'll do that. And we want our own show. And dude, all of a sudden I had my own show at the Laugh Factory.
You were like hosting it.
I was hosting it. Yeah. And it was Joe Sib's Complete Control. And it was a Thursday once a month. And I remember I got in there and I remember the woman that was booking the Comedy Store, this woman named Darren Moore, she was so just like, she's like, okay, all right, so okay, welcome to the Laugh Factory. All right, so yeah, come down tonight and do a spot. And I'm like, oh yeah, and on the spot, Bill Burr, Chris D'Elia, all these heavies,
murderers,
just crushers. And I'm like, cool. I remember it was the first.
You're like PMA.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, so much. I remember that. I remember I was so green and just. I remember I saw Bill Burr and I go, hey man, I used to manage the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, because he's a Boston guy, and he's like, cool. And he just like walks by. I go to Chris D'Elia. I live in Glendale because he's Armenian. He's like, great. You know, I'm like, all right, cool. I'm
You
out.
just have
Just
insecure Tourette's.
Dude, just striking out on everybody, you know. And then
What's funny is with comics is like, and this is the weird part. Like I'm very like, hey, I look like a very approachable human being. Anytime I've been in those settings at the store and I'm standing there and I have friends that talk to these people and are at the store with these people, and I'm like, I'm not speaking to. I shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Because until they see me on stage, there is no reason.
But see, my problem was they were seeing me on stage. And that's why they were just like, dude. And like the only thing I had going for me was that I never bombed like terribly. But Jamie, he asked me, he said, hey buddy, you know, I want you to host tonight. And I'm like, okay. And then he'd be like, you come tomorrow night, you host. And I was like, all right. And then I remember he was just like, he just kept making me host. And then I remember all the other comics, they looked at you as a host, like you were just a piece of like,
well, you gotta be for a while.
No, I know, but like I didn't. So once again, I thought hosting was killer. Like if you go on the East Coast, hosting's the spot. You know, like that's like you're crushing.
It is different, yeah.
It's different. And I was like,
you used to be able to make a living as a host.
I thought I was like, I loved hosting. I do a little time at the front, I knew not to, you know, bogart the show in between the comics, but I knew how to bring it up. I knew how to bring it down. I knew how to set it up.
It's a skill.
It's, you know, and I was really good at it. And I remember though, all the other comics, no names mentioned, they just looked at me like a peon. They were just like, and I remember one comic in particular said, I don't host. And I was like, and I remember I'm like, okay. He's like, I don't know. I was like, all right, dude.
Because he's above that now.
He's above it. And, you know, and at the time he wasn't. And I was like, all right, you don't host. And I kept hosting and hosting. And then what
is that guy a huge comedian then?
He's not a huge comedian, but you know, he's around. But I remember
you heard it here. Bill Burr.
No.
Is it?
No.
Joe Sib.
It's not him. Not even near him. All Bill Burr said to me, it was but it's funny though, because years later, so check this out. So
tell me that years later that guy hosted for you.
Bill Burr?
No. The guy that said I don't know.
No. And the thing was, he wasn't trying to be a dick to me saying he doesn't host. He was just letting me know, like,
establishing his level.
He was like, I don't host. I'm like, okay, cool. So then but then I remember, dude, one night being at the Laugh Factory and Eric Griffin walked in. And I mean, at this point, Eric, you know, I think he has Workaholics going. I mean, he didn't have all the other stuff going, but you know, Jamie threw him and like, yeah, Eric Griffin, you're hosting tonight. And I remember he's like, oh man. And that's kind of when I found out hosting's lame. Yeah. And I go, I love hosting. He's like, Joe, no offense. Like, you know, that's cool. Like, I'm stoked you want to host. And if you want to tonight, be kind of rad. But I don't want to, you know, like, I don't, you know, I'm not really a host. I come in but dude, he didn't even question it. He sucked it up and he hosted it that night. He crushed.
Jamie says you host, you host.
He crushed.
That's the other thing is that, like, you get every now and then you get put in a position like that and you're like, okay. Yeah. Because I don't host. Yeah. I don't want to, I will. Yeah. But I'm usually, it's not, you do reach a level where you're like, oh, I don't do that because I'm the guy that can do 15 in the middle.
If you want to, if you thought about it, you could say, you know, when I'm touring, you know, doing a 2-man show, you know, I'm featuring, but I'm also bringing myself up. So you know, it's like,
and and also at the same time, if something like ACC does a lot of 2-man shows where like you're doing a cold open for 20, and then you bring the headliner up, and it's like, I'll do that every day, no problem.
The thing though that I remember those, and then you know, when I started doing the store and all that, but the one thing though that I always loved, that kind of like, it'll go full circle and then we've been in here forever, was years later. This is like right when it's like right before the pandemic. Josh Adam Myers is doing his rock show, you know, where a comic sings and then they tell they tell a story and they sing. And Josh and I, you know, we know each other, and at this point, you know, he was doing a show and he was like, man, I gotta have you on the show. And finally I get invited to do the show, and he's like, you know, what song are you going to do? And I go, oh, dude, I'll do a Cheap Trick song. And I got a story for that. He's like, okay, cool. And I remember Bill Burr was on the show. And I was so stoked, you know, because I hadn't seen him, or I mean, I'd seen him, but like I had never talked to him since then. And at this point, he's just, you know, he's crushing it. He's on fire. And
but now you have a reason to talk.
Yeah,
to him.
now I have a reason to him, and you know, and we've been on enough. At that point, we've crossed paths enough, but I've never talked to him. But like, you know, we've done spots where I'm like, you know, that's the great thing about comedy. You know, one night you're bringing up Chappelle, and the next night you're at the sandwich shop, which that was super fun. I got to bring up Chappelle like right when he came back, and that was like he was so cool. And he used to always say like, hey man, do me a favor, like, you know, how many more comics you got? And I'm like, we have like 3 minutes. Okay, I want to go at the end. And he goes, dude, don't make a big deal, but ask everyone not to film. That was his big thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, just bring me up. You don't have to make a big. I was like, okay. And of course I'd be like, ladies, you don't even want to know. Check this out.
He was like, way to go.
Yeah,
way to
exactly.
keep it low key.
He was always super cool. But anyway, so this one night though, after we go up there and we sound check for Josh's show, and I'm sitting there I'm in the Roxy. I nailed my song. Jeff Ross is on it. He did like Joe Jackson. Is she really going out with him? Nailed it. Bill Burr's playing drums on like a DC song, and like we're all hanging out. And Josh and Bill are, you know, they're bros. And you know, I'm just kind of sitting there, you know, like, okay, did sound check, you know, got like 2 hours to kill before the show. And Josh is like stressing, and Bill comes and sits down. And so now like we're kind of sitting near each other, and I'm like, oh fuck, that's cool. And I know he's friends with Brewer, but like I'm like, I don't want to, you know, hey, I don't want to do my maneuver. Yeah. I'm friends with Jim Brewer. You know, he's okay, you know. Dude, Boston's, you know. And I'm like, all right, cool, man. I'm just sitting there, but I'm playing it cool, right? And Bill's like, he's like, what are you doing, Josh? Like, what are we gonna do? You got time for a cigar? I want to go smoke a stick. You know, let's go smoke a stick. He was calling it like a stick, and I was like, I'm sitting there, and I smoke cigars, and Josh's like, I got to get the list, and then the guy's coming, and then they got to get the gear. You know what, man? I don't know. I can't go. I'll just see. You know, I got to get this stuff done before the show. And then Burr just looks over at me. He's like, hey, man, good job with the Cheap Trick song. And I'm like, oh, thanks. And he's like, you smoke cigars? And I'm like, yeah, there's a great shop. Exactly, the Havana shop. You want to go? And I'm like, yeah. So then we walk down together, and we go in, and as we're walking down, he's like, yeah, man, like, yeah, like we met? And I'm like, and you know, of course I don't bring up the Laugh Factory. I'm like, no, I think we've done a couple shows together. Yeah. He's like, oh, that's cool. And I'm like, oh, you know, we got a mutual friend. And I tell him I know Brewer, and he's like, oh, dude, I love Jim. And you know, we're talking about that, and then we go and we each pick out a cigar, and I'm like, yeah, dude, I love these. And he's like, oh yeah, and he's like, all right, cool. And then you know, he goes, oh, I got it, man, it on me. And I'm like, oh, cool. And then I remember, this is the thing I remember, like, they had like alcohol that you could buy, you know, or they had sodas, and Burr grabbed like a soda, like an Orange Crush or something, like a soda that like doesn't even exist anymore. And I go, wow. And he goes, yeah, you know, I used to drink with it, but like the cigar is already so heavy, you know, why do I have to have alcohol with it? I'll just have a soda. And I remember I was like, wow, I've never thought of it that way. So then I'm like, I drink Orange Crush too, or whatever it was that he drank. And then, dude, we just sat there, and I remember we just sat there and talked comedy, and just, you know, just like us. Like it was like right away you're like, oh, like like there's certain people, like, you know, I've sat down with Dave Grohl before, and it's like you don't know Dave Grohl, but you do, because you're into the same shit. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You just have these long conversations about,
I think
oh my God.
Comics and musicians, I would expect, are similar in a sense where like comics are just looking for the hang.
Dude, and that's what it was.
And the truth is, like, it's, I think for most of, like, and it's a weird way to put it, but like hanging with civilians, like two comics of any kind, and you hear this in every podcast, and you hear all these, you know, that's a beautiful thing about the time we have now, is like there's so many interviews with comedians where they're like, you know, even the huge ones are like, I'm invited to this giant Hollywood party, I'm at this house up in the hills, I don't know anybody, there's Leonardo DiCaprio and blah 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 blah, and then I see whoever that's another comic who I've never met, but I know they're a comic, and I immediately we're standing in the corner having the time of our lives.
You've done a show together,
never talking to anybody else. Done a show
together, and you know right away you can go, dude, how much of a trip is this? We gotta hang. Like, I can't hang with you.
We can sit here and talk, because the rest of this doesn't make sense.
That was the thing that was cool. And like that later that night, you know, we got done with the show, and I remember we took a photo together, you know, all the people that were on the show, and Bill was just so cool, and you know, I just, once again, it reminded me of punk rock. Like it was like, the first time I met like Dee Dee Ramone, or the first time I met like, when I met Joe Strummer, like even though they're these huge, iconic artists, I realized, wow, like you just said, like we are sharing the same common.
There's a bond. There's a bond.
Yeah. And that's the thing that and that's the thing, I do love about stand up is that, with music, it's pretty rare that you're going to be like, and then one night I jammed with James from Metallica, because it's just so much goes into it. But with comedy, you can be like,
one night I'm doing a sandwich shop. The next night, somehow I got asked to open for blah, blah, blah.
Last night I did a sandwich shop. Tonight I opened up for Patton Oswalt. And you're like, how did that even happen?
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah. Did we do good?
Things to touch on, because I just love hearing this. One, when you started this band, there's girls.
Yeah.
What was your first love? How old were you? What happened?
Oh, the first girlfriend I had was this girl named Kim Collins, and I was in like high school with her. She's the one that turned me on to Metallica. She turned me on to a lot of music. She's super into music. And then...
And was that like your first heartbreak, or did that end?
Oh, no, that was like my first, like, real girlfriend. She was just like, she was into like metal and like just super heavy music. Like, whoa. Like I remember she turned me on to like Ride the Lightning, and, like that was super cool, like just because she, you had someone that was like into the same music you were, but then even went deeper.
Yeah.
So that was super.
So, I mean, but you were writing songs, you're in bands.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you writing songs about?
Oh, what am I writing songs about? I'm writing songs about unity. I'm writing songs about, I'm writing songs about how, we're the new generation of punk rock. I'm writing songs about how we're going to survive. I'm writing songs about, I need your help. Like, I'm all about unity. I'm all about like, we're all in it together, and we're all going to.
It was PMA back then too.
Dude, so PMA. I was all about changing
with positive mental attitude.
Positive mental attitude all day. That's what I was all about. I was all about, the bands that influenced me were the Bad Brains, 7 Seconds. I was just so into like hardcore like that. And then, like I said, I loved bands like Peter and Test Tube Babies, GBH, I loved it all.
What is something you wish, what is like a piece of wisdom or something that you wish somebody would have told you when you were a 15-year-old kid?
Don't take it so seriously.
By it being
everything. Yeah. Don't. I think I tend to, I take everything. Like I can take something that's meant to be fun and work so hard on it that it's no longer fun.
Yeah.
My ex-wife said to me when I started stand-up, she said something I always remember. She said, I said, I really want to do this stand-up thing. And
you were already married?
Oh yeah, we were married,
Okay.
And she said to me, she was super, when I was in my, she was with me through all my bands. She was with me through all sides, super, super, super supportive, just, there for the whole entire ride. But the one thing she said when I decided to do stand-up, she was like, I'm down for you to do it, but just please keep it fun. Like, don't take it so seriously that it turns into, this albatross, is that the right word?
I don't know.
Don't have it turn into something that, cause I tend to do that. I want to be the best. I want to work harder. I got to do this. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I got to do spots. Well, are you doing them because you're enjoying it? Or are you doing spots because you're in some competition with yourself?
Are you actually growing? Are you writing new material? Or are you just doing no, cause like if I'm not doing spots, then I'm not a comedian.
Dude, and I do, and sometimes,
which is a struggle to go. Like I think everyone goes through that, and I remember even especially starting. It's like, yeah, you should be on stage every single night. But also when they'd be like, we'd finish one mic, and the group of people would be like, hey, we're gonna go out and do that show, and I'm like, you're gonna drive 45 minutes to do 5 minutes at a bar that nobody wants you to do.
Yeah.
Like those people are alcoholics. They're drinking on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
They don't want you there.
Yeah, and I've learned.
I don't know what the ROI is on this.
And I've also learned though, like the thing that I've had to learn though is it's also, I've also had to learn that with comedy that I want comedy to stay fun, and I want comedy, I want to work hard, and I want to write and stuff like that. But like, I think when I was in bands, I made it not fun for the other people in the band. And because
you were taking it so serious.
I would take it so serious.
I have a buddy that he had a bunch of bands. He's like 15 years younger than us. But he had a bunch of bands from the time he was like 14, 15 years old. And he grew up in LA too and stuff. And he was like, the problem that I ran into the most is that I wanted to be a successful band.
Yeah.
So I was the one that was like, guys, we got a space. We need to practice 4 nights a week. I got us this show on Saturday.
Yeah. That was me.
I got us on a thing to go to whatever. And he said that they were all into it. And they were all on board, and he was running the show, and he was driving it, and he was like, you got to be here, we got to practice, da-da-da-da. And everyone was in until the slightest bit of success, until these guys started having a little bit of pocket cash from the shows, and then they just started living like they were rock stars, and he was left running the show, and all of a sudden, now they're not showing up to practice, and they're drunk at shows, and they're drinking too much, and they're more worried about which girl's going to come after the show and where's the booze than putting on a good show and practicing and putting out the next album.
Yeah.
And he was like, that happened to me in 4 different bands.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a common experience. And I think for me, I was that guy. Like, I mean, I know for me, I was always the guy that, was booking the shows, setting up the practices, writing, always wanted to write, always wanted to create. And then when I came to stand up, what I realized, and I also realized this too with stand-up, is that like, when I was in, even when I was in Maui, like I go over to Maui for like this 3-week vacation, and I get there and, a comic finds out, like, cause I was going there to do a show. So I was already on a show. I had a show at the end of the month, and I was like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to hang out. I'm going to go for 3 weeks. I'm going to go there for 3 weeks. I got the show in the third week that I'm there. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Dude, I landed, like I got there on like a Sunday, and one of the comics that was going to be on the show was like, yo, dude, we got a show. We have a show on Tuesday nights. And I was like, really? And it was like so close. And my girlfriend's like, yeah, go do this. Go do the spot. So I go to the spot on Tuesday. Well, we got another show on Thursday. I'm like, oh, okay. So I drive over there on Thursday. Then, dude, it was like, we got a spot on Saturday, if you want to do a guest spot. And I'm like, okay. And then all of a sudden I was like, I did like 3 spots, and then I had, then I was leading up to my show, and then all of a sudden it kind of hit me. I was like, oh man, like now, like it's like I love it so much that like I'm like bleeding it into, like, because in the past I would have taken 3 weeks off and be like, okay, I'm just gonna, I'm not,
Why?
I don't no
for the person.
No.
For you,
for me, it would be like, because I do feel like I feel it's totally. This is just my own personal thing, and I know that I've had this conversation with people. So when I, like right now, I'm doing, right now I'm in work mode. I'm in, and when I thought I went to Maui, I thought I wasn't going to be in work mode, but I actually, I did spots like every week. I was doing 2 spots when I was on vacation, which was great. And they have a great scene over in Maui too. A lot of great comics. What ended up happening that I've realized is that it's important to sometimes take a break from stand up, not take a break like for a month, but take a break for like a 2-weeker, 10-dayer.
Yeah.
And not think about it and not do anything. And then go back on stage, because it recalibrates your brain. It clears out all the viruses.
Yeah.
It's like your computer, it runs faster. I had this conversation with Ellen. Ellen went to Boston. She was out there for like, I don't know, 3 weeks or something. And while she was there, she had some personal stuff she had to deal with. So she wasn't in that mindset of like, I'm doing comedy.
Yeah.
She came back, she did a set, and the next day I talked to her. She's like, I had a set last night that was on fire. And I'm like, really? She's like, I don't know what it was. I got on stage. I'm all, hey, when you were in Boston, were you doing comedy? No, I had to take like 2 weeks, 3 weeks off. I go, that's why you had a killer set. You've recalibrated. You got all of the baggage that comes along with comedy. Right. Are people going to be at that show? Did I promote that? Did I go there? Did the mic drop answer my email? Did so-and-so answer me back?
And I also think there's something of like you get in the rhythm of your jokes.
Yep. Oh, totally.
And you know them, and then all of a sudden you don't do them for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And you know the jokes, but you've lost the rhythm.
And you're almost doing them for the first time again.
Yes, but which also means
brand new vibe.
You're not stuck in that rut of this is how I do this bit. This is how the cadence goes. This is the rhythm.
Louis said something about that once. He said, you got to be careful when you're doing your bits, because it's like a piece of wood. You do it so many times, there's a groove in it. And then all of a sudden one night, a bit that always hit won't hit anymore. And maybe it goes back to what you and I were saying, the crowd ain't feeling you, but when you put so much groove into that, all of a sudden the bit now has lost the magic that it has.
Right.
And that's why he was, he said, they said, do you listen to all your sets? He goes, I listen to it once and then I don't listen to it again. And then I'd go back on stage and because he wants to keep the bit still like
in flux,
but also like what his theory was that like, if I know the bit so well and I can do it verbatim, then I'm going to lose a little bit of the magic.
Yeah.
And I feel that way even about like, I always felt that way about songs. Like there's no way that like, you know, a band like Everlong, you know, by the Foo Fighters, like when they first play that song, you know, and they're playing it, it's like that song, you know, is being played with a passion and a love.
They're bleeding it.
Now when they play Everlong, and you know, that's one of the few bands that still delivers the goods, like you know, our Pearl Jam, you know, it's like these bands still deliver, and like Eddie Vedder still sings like his life depends on it, but no matter what, every time he's done, you know, Jeremy or any of the other hits, you know, it's still one more time than it was when it was originally there. You're getting further and further away from the first time.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but there's times I'll do a bit, like whenever I come up with a new bit that works, it always feels like the first time I did it was always the best. And then
you got to be careful. This happened to me the other night. I did a 15-minute set and I went up and did 12 minutes. It was literally I wrote that day. And most of it worked. It was clunky. Yeah. It was too long.
Yeah.
But it was so hot. And then it's like, all right, when you go up tomorrow, you're not recreating this. And that's the problem with like for early show, late show.
Yeah.
You have a fucking murderous early show and you're like, I'm going to do that again. You can't.
It's never
not possible.
And I feel though, like the sooner you acknowledge that as a performer and as a comic, that's why for me, whenever I get the mic in my hand, I feel like that first 30 to 40 seconds, it has to be, it's got to be something spontaneous and something like just different with the audience. And like, it really sets the tone for me. And I don't know about you, but like there's been times where I'm like, I come out and it's like, if something clunky happens at the first bit, it'll be like, oh man, I gotta fix that really quick. Whereas like if I can come out and I can, you know, say something about this and that, and it makes people laugh and they know that I made it up on the spur of the moment, I'm like, okay, we're all on the same ride.
Yeah.
Here we go. But I totally do believe that like with bits, you know, the more you do them, it's like, you know, like I always tell people, you know, one of the best things that Ralphie May. Ralphie May had this thing. I don't know if it's still out there, but I don't know if you've ever watched it. It was Ralphie May getting interviewed at the Belly Room at the Comedy Store.
Yeah, he like popped into the class, right? And it's like an hour and 20-minute video or 2-hour video.
Like 2 hours, 3 hours.
Yeah, and he just sits there and breaks down comedy for this classroom.
Bro,
I've seen it.
It is a game changer. If you're watching right now, look it up. It's Ralphie
It's on
May,
YouTube.
And it's I want to say it's like 3 hours because it changed my whole approach to doing stand-up. Like when even on the weeks that I'm home and I go up to the store, you know, a lot of times when I'm going to the store, like, you know, for a while there, like everybody, I'm like, I got to go to the store and I got to write this new bit. And then I'd say to myself, well, who are you writing the new bit for? James and Monty and Ellen. So you're trying to stoke them out.
Yeah.
And Ralphie's thing is like, no. So you're going to go up there and you're going to waste time. Like you're going to try to create something. Okay. Now
for the back of the room,
if you've got a new bit,
all
purposes, do it, but don't spend all day. You know, you've got this opportunity to do 10 minutes at the store. All right, you don't have any new material? This is what we're doing. I want you to take one of your oldest bits that always used to crush, and I want you to do it tonight. First time you've done it, because then all of a sudden, what we've done? We've created this magic. I'm trying to figure out the bit again. When I'm trying to figure it out on stage, magic happens.
Yeah.
All right, you're not doing that. Okay, now what I want you to do is this. You got a 10-minute set. What's your closer? I want you to open with your closer tonight. I want you to come
I thought that
out.
Was interesting. Louis said that, where Louis he's like right before he'd go up, he set his set list.
Yeah.
And then as he walked on stage, he would open with his closer, which would force him to turn whatever the joke before that would be into a closer.
There you go. And the thing that I learned from watching that Ralphie May thing, it was that really changed my whole perception of like what you can be doing when you're working out
Yeah.
and what needs to be worked out and what, for a long time there, you guys and women and comics that are at our level, we're all inspired by the Louis C.K. He has the special that comes out every year, or all these other comics, they're releasing this.
Yeah.
And the bottom, Brian Regan, who's one of, my favorite comedians, I was told, Brian Regan had the same set that he did, that all those guys, Bill Burr, Brewer, all of them that sit in the room, that he would come down to do this show, and they'd all go and watch him, and they knew he was doing the same hour that he did, but it was flawless and no one had a problem with it. And what I've realized is, I think comics nowadays, because we're trying to get a bit on we're trying to get, and I'm doing it too. We're trying to get a clip on the TikTok, on Instagram. Yep, we're trying to get a clip for here, and we're clip chasing, which I get because that's part of the game now. But what I think we're sometimes skipping is the fine tuning and the finishing work of a bit. Like it's like a home. When you move into your house and you see these people's homes, and they got the tile, and they got the little thing here, and they got that, and then there's other people's houses you go to, and it's just like, it's not finished. It's like, dude, you didn't finish it. And they're like, yeah, but it's got 4 roofs and it's cool. You're like, yeah, it could be a lot cooler.
It's a house.
And it's like, what I realize with bits is that we need to still stay in the frame of mind of, I know the comics in the back of the room have heard it. Okay, you're not here for them.
Not here for them.
The people up front have not. They don't know who you are. Give them the best bit possible. I was having a conversation the other night about pushing a bit out, going as wide as you can. Like, I tend to, I'll write something, it'll hit, and I'll be honest, I get lazy. I'm like, oh yeah, that
works.
That's hitting. I gave 2 examples, and then I'm like, dude, you're not. You should.
I look at most of my bits. I'm like, that's a 3-minute bit. It should be 8. You can dive in.
I saw
every joke you get should have 3 tags.
Dude, I saw a comic the other night come up with a premise, and it was. I told him, I said, that right there. It's a 20. Oh, dude, it was Jesse Egan.
Mm-hmm.
He has this whole new bit about going to Italy with his wife, and I go, dude, that right there is 20 minutes.
Right.
That right there, like, you went up for 10. That, like, and he's like, you think so? I'm like, dude, this bit is such a monster. And
if you dive, if you go looking.
And he was like, we talked about it for like a half hour that night. And I was like, bro, I'm telling you, man, that is a monster bit. And what I'm trying to do right now is, like I'm in this weird thing where it's a total sidebar is, so, my dad and I are really, really close, and he's amazing. And, we had a falling out over stand-up. When I did that California Calling show, I told all these stories about him. I thought I was telling stories about, and the crowd was like, people after the show were like, I cannot wait to meet your dad. Your dad, he should be on the show. Because I told stories about my dad and the way that he parented in the 80s. And people loved it. And they were like, wow.
Well, they probably related.
He related, but it was also like the way he would tell me things, and the way he was so cut and dry, and he was just no BS. And people could relate with it, and also were like, wow, what wisdom, what great parenting advice, And also they're seeing the finished product. Like, I never did drugs. They're like, dude, it worked.
Yeah.
So when my dad came to see California Calling, he saw it, and it just devastated him, because what he took it as is like, dude, like, you just shared, like, that was between you and I, and then you say that on stage? Why would you do that?
Because he was embarrassed? Or he felt ashamed of his behavior or something?
No, his behavior. It wasn't behavior. It was just like, dude, did you need to put the picture up of me at the beach with no shirt on? Like, come on, bro. Like, dude, that was our family. Not that I did that, but like, it was too close to home. And now being a dad.
And you're the performer. He's not.
And now being a dad, it's like my son and daughter could totally be like, oh yeah, my dad once told me, hey, like, dude, I said that to you in the car between us, and now you're telling everyone, like, Which
now as a comic is a double-edged sword, because I'm sure there's part of it's like.
Yeah. Well, no, the thing was, we didn't talk for a while, and then when we made up, he was like, look, I get it now, but like, I'm just asking you, don't let's not, I just don't want to be a part of your act. And I was like, great. But now, once I started doing stand up, and I was like, now he like put me in the act. Like, he kind of likes it, And we do. It's funny because during the pandemic, we spent so much time together that like a lot of my bits, like one of my bits that turned into a really big bit was I got really pissed at my son one day, and I was like, I am so over him. You know what? I swear to God, Dad, I'm going to live as long as I can, so I have to move in with him because I swear I'm going to do all the same shit he does to me. And my dad was like, write that down, and that's a bit. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, that's funny. You're going to live as long as you can to move in with him.
Move in.
So you can smoke weed and walk around shirtless. That's funny. Like, you got to do it. So that turned into a bit. So what ended up happening is my dad and we worked together, but also my dad, he's a super smart individual. And recently he came to see me headline, and, the next day I always, all right, we're going to have coffee, and he's going to give the review.
Yeah.
And, he wasn't feeling it. He's like, yeah, you know what? And I had a killer show, dude. Like, it was one of my best shows. It was packed. It was like, I did old material, I did new material, and I did this big chunk that just crushed. And I mean, like I knew, like I walked off stage that night, and it was a great night, And the next day he's just like, I just I don't know, like I just miss the stories. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know, like, you did, like, I loved when you used to tell the story about your daughter and her having a party, or when you move in with Nate, or, I love, and at first, I was kind of taken back, like, hey dude, like, I know what I'm doing. No offense. The crowd loved it.
Dad, I just need you to be positive.
And I kind of went for, like, in my head, I kind of did to him. I didn't say this to him, but I kind of was doing what my kids do to me. Like, dude, no offense, but you don't know what's going on. Like you don't know what funny is. Telling the guy who turned me on to Richard Pryor, Saturday Night Live, Monty Python Circus, George Carlin, Flip Wills, like the guy that's funny. Like my dad's a funny dude, But
I do think we are protective of what we do. Because also, this is the other thing. Did you find that everyone I know, and like my brothers and my mom, at some point or another, I'd be like, I'll do the comedy. Like I don't know why you're giving me career advice right now.
So then what happened was, and I went down this thing, and so then like but he was cool. He was like, dude, like, he goes, and he said to me right away, he's like, I'm telling you this right now. I mean, the crowd loved it. I could tell they loved it. He goes, I'm just telling you from my perspective what I missed. And I was like, so, okay. And then I was like, okay, so like, tell me what you're missing. He's like, I love when you tell the stories of like growing up, or you tell these stories that like, even though I didn't grow up in that era, I can relate to it. I'm like, okay, that's what we're getting to. So all of a sudden, I was like, I get in this weird frame of mind where like, I started trying to write this bit about a story of like, okay, what story haven't I told? And then it messed with me, man. Like, it fucked with me for like a while. And I was like, I was trying to write all these, I was trying new material about that. And then I remember this, and it was just not, I was like, and I was trying to force this story
because dad
wants it. And then to make it worse, not to make it worse, but to make it like, God, my Dry Bar special came out about 2 weeks ago. And I was like, and it was a set I did. It was right when COVID ended. It was so old. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, like whatever. And they took the way they put it out, they took this 10-minute clip as like the intro, like check out. And the way they wrote it was like growing. It was like, I swear to it was like my dad wrote it. It was like growing up in a different time, like growing up in a time when things were this and that. And it was a bit about like my mom taking me to McDonald's that I used to do, then a bit about my dad, and then a bit about my kid, and a bit about my daughter. And it was like all the comments are like, I love his stories. They're so relatable. It's so nice to have and I'm like, oh God. Like then it even got, I was like, dude. So then I'm like trying to chase this story.
You just got to write.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Whatever it is, write it down. It'll be whatever it is.
Because what ends up happening is, what ends up happening to me, and I did it with songwriting. I remember my first band, we had this song called Hush. And it was the reason that like the labels came around, and the song did good on 120 Minutes and on MTV. And then all of a sudden we started just going, we got to write another Hush. We got to write, like, that's our vibe. But
this is back to the Suits being like, we need another, just like the first album. We need another radio hit.
The Suit was sitting right here. I was like, we got to write another Hush. We got to write another Hush. We got to write this. And then all of a sudden my guitarist was like, dude, that was like a moment that we did. We got to write what we want to write. And then
what's the next moment?
Yeah. And then the next thing we wrote was the biggest song we ever had, this song called California. And it blew up. And it was because we just went back to like, write what you want to write. And that, and even at a weird thing, I think as an artist, as whatever, it's so funny because you can be doing everything. And at least for me, this is just me personally, but I can do this, I can do that. I can have success with that. I can have no success with that. But when it comes down to it, it's still my dad. Like I just revert back to like, I'm 10 and he's telling me,
oh yeah,
you know what, man? Like, I really think you should go down this road. And it still gets me every time.
Yeah. That's one I've had that talk with my mom. I've had that talk with my brothers, and it's like, and I find it's more, if I have them one-on-one, we're good.
Yeah.
But if my entire family gets together, I'm 6 years old, like, and they put me there and I fall in.
Oh, totally.
And I've just realized like, oh, I'm done with that.
Yeah. My dad and I went on a trip to Europe. About, we went to he was like, let's go to Italy together. I'm like, that'll be awesome. So we went together, and we from the moment we met in Milan or wherever it was that I flew into, I immediately was 14 again. And he was immediately my dad.
Yeah.
And it was so bad because I was doing the same shit. I was totally messing with him, and he'd get mad. Because I was like jumping on, and like I was doing what I do, like pushing him around, and he'd be like, stop doing that. And I'd be like, why? It's funny. He'd say, we are on a trip right now. And the more angry he would get, I would think it's funnier.
And what's weird is you're an adult.
Yeah, we're both adult
men. You pay
men.
taxes.
Dude,
and
we're
shit.
adult men.
Yeah.
And then he would start laughing, and then he would be like, look, and then he would, he'd be like, it would just, we fell into those same roles again so quickly. But yeah, it's, man, it's the whole thing, man. It's been one killer journey. And the one thing I figured out is this, man, it never turns out the way I think it's going to turn out.
Yeah. I feel the same. It's starting to, I feel like I'm starting to grasp of like, I know you have plans, and great.
Yeah.
You should strive for your goals.
Yeah.
But also 11 years ago when you started, you never thought you'd be sitting here doing what you're doing and having the success you have. That is not the success you ever looked for.
Yeah.
And which means 11 years from now, who knows where you're going to be. And this was a big thing that I ran into with my family because and it's all in the goodness of their heart. Just like your dad was like, I miss the stories. You should do the stories. I remember I would tell my mom about something, and I think it was like maybe, I don't know if it was the Super Bowl ad or something that was going to happen. And the first thing that came, she's like, oh, you need to really make sure you're doing a good job for them. You need to make sure that they're happy with you. You got to make sure you're healthy and maybe start working out or something. And I was like, Mom, I just told you about the most successful thing that's ever happened to me. And you immediately started telling me what I should do.
Yeah.
Not congrats.
Yep.
Not I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, I need you to know that I never really need career advice from you.
Yeah.
What I need you to be is my cheerleader. Whenever I tell you anything, I need you to just say
high fives and cartwheels.
High fives and cartwheels. That's what I need out of you.
Yeah.
And it's just a weird thing that my family does where they're like, oh, well, if you're doing that, you know what you should do. And I'm like, first of all, none of you have ever been in entertainment. None of you have ever written a joke. None of you have ever performed on stage in any way whatsoever. I'll do this part.
But with our families though,
it's pure love.
Pure love.
And it's fear. It's fear that like, oh, you got this thing, but what if it goes away? Don't mess it,
Yeah.
And I remember at one point my mom was like, you really need to start writing more. And which was just like this out of left field, whatever. She's like, you should really be setting time aside to really write and da 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 da. And I was like, Mom, everything I've done and all my skills got me here.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep doing what I do because I've never been better at it before.
Yeah.
Like I'm better at what I do than I've ever been.
Yeah.
And the skills that I have got me here.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's time to completely change the way I work.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm more efficient than I've ever been. I'm more active than I've ever been. Like, things are all trending in the right direction, but, like, you don't change everything.
Yeah. I've been fortunate enough, though, that my dad will go the opposite way. Like, I'll be saying, I need to do da, 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 da. He'll be like, Joey,
you're already doing
it, and you're where you want to be. Like, I've been really fortunate that way. Like, he'll remind me, I'll be like, oh, my God, I should be doing A, B, and C. And be like, what are you talking about? Like, whatever it is that you're doing, keep doing it. Don't fix it if it ain't broken.
Was it like this in music? I feel like as soon as you started comedy, there was like for me, like a year in, people are already talking like, so like, when are you going to move to LA? Are you going to record an album?
I started way late.
See, I was 30.
Yeah, no, but I started my 40s, dude. Yeah. I was 40 something years old.
But there was always this push of like, you gotta like if you haven't made it by the time you're 3 years in, like I don't know why, but there was this mentality.
I think for me it was more like, are you done? Are you think you're gonna keep doing it? Like I had a lot of that. I remember
that is weird. Starting later,
people were more like,
Did you have fun?
Yeah, you're good, right? Like,
yeah.
like they'd come to a show and then they'd be like, oh, and then I'd go on the road or something. I would always be chasing something else, and I had more people. I have close friends that were. The other thing I got was I had a lot of friends that were my age that were like, they would say, it was weird. You had some guys that were super, and I'm they're friends. I could feel they're bitter that I was doing it.
Right, because they're still grinding at this thing.
Or no, they just gave up. They're
grinding at a thing they hate.
Yeah, they're in a marriage they're super bummed on.
They've got a job
they hate. They hate their kids. Their kids hate them. The only thing they love is they got their car, and unfortunately they're just like they're bummed. And then all of a sudden
they see you,
and
you're happy,
and you're like, dude, I'm doing something that I've never done before, and I'm having fun at it. And they're like, oh yeah, super stoked. I can't make it tonight. You're like, okay, get it. Then there was the people though. Then there I have some really close friends, and I have this one friend in particular, and he's like my he doesn't even know it, but like he'll send me texts like somehow or another, like he has a radar where he'll say to me, and we played music together, he'll send these texts sometimes to me where I'm like, how does he know that I'm down right now? Or how does he know I'm questioning if I should do this, or is it silly that I'm doing this? Like, am I being silly right now?
Or irresponsible?
Am I delusional? Am I irresponsible? Like, and he'll send me a text like, hey man, like I love that he said to me once, he's like, man, my daughter came to see you and she said you killed it. And I was like, thanks. He's like, you know what I love, man? You're there, you're doing it, and you're getting rad. You're still getting rad. And like that's our code word.
Yeah,
for getting rad means like you're going for it. You're not backing down. You're getting rad. And like when he sent that to me, I was like, it was like him, a friend that I admire, a friend that I respect, a friend that I shared stage with, and he's like, you're still there. Like you're like, it's more than you, bro. Like you doing it is me doing it. Like I'm connected to you and you're doing it. And like I was like, whoa. And there's a few of those guys. But when I started, I think everyone, they just think, because when you say you're going to do stand-up comedy, George Carlin said it. He said the best quote. He says like, hey, it's all about me. I'm the guy. And it's like, everyone's like, no, you're not. Everyone thinks they're funnier than you, and then.
Everyone thinks they can do stand-up because we look like we're just standing there talking.
Yeah. But Phyllis Diller said, if you go and see a comedian and you're watching the comedian and you say to yourself, I could do that. Don't think so. The comic is just so good that he makes you believe you can do it.
Yeah. Which is also why I encourage anybody that's like, I could do that. I think I'd be good at that. I'd be like, good. You should sign up for an open mic.
Yeah.
You should write 5 minutes worth of jokes, sign up for an open mic, step on that stage, do it. Because one, I think it's healthy for you to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. And when you step off that stage after 5 minutes, you're either going to go on with your life as if nothing ever happened, or you're fucked.
Yeah.
Because you loved it.
Oh. Or be prepared to lose everything and be stoked.
Yeah. I remember when I was driving around the country, when I decided I was going to do this, it was before I got to San Diego. I drove around the country for about 5 months in my truck.
Yeah.
I hit every open mic, and I hit like every city. It was like Charlotte, Richmond, DC, New York, Philly, Boston, Burlington, Montreal, Newport, Rhode Island, down back to New York, over to like Pittsburgh. Like I hit all. It was 5 months living out of my truck. I loved it. I lived more life in those 5 months than I had lived in the previous 10 years. Like and I had a good 10 years before that. I was happy, but this was just amazing. And I remember thinking to myself, be like, I have never had less money and been more happy in my life. Like if this is what it is, I'm in.
You're in. And yeah, I mean that right there. It's all about what you're measuring.
And then you have a kid, and now you're like, well, shit, I can't live in a truck.
No.
I would.
But I'll tell you right
there's
now,
a kid
dude.
here now.
I'll tell you this right now, though. The best thing that ever happened to me was having my 2 kids. A, because they're amazing and they're wonderful. But man, it kicked my ass to not fuck around anymore. I was like, if I'm not making money, I ain't doing that. If this isn't like, and when I say if I'm not making money, I'm not saying like, oh, cool. You
Every
know,
single show.
I'm not saying that. But I'm saying like, you know, if once I had my kids, now, you know, my life's changed a little bit because my kids are older now.
Yeah. So mine just started kindergarten.
Yeah, you're in the game where you're like, I gotta put away $300, $400, $500,000 to take care of this person. I mean, that it's raising a kid's $1 million.
I didn't know that.
Literally, you didn't know that? Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I've thought about it.
I have a joke on stage where I'm like, man, you know, if while you were making this person, there was a calculator above the bed with all the shit you're gonna spend money on.
With every pump, it's just the number gets bigger and bigger.
It's like a tutor's baseball practice, you know, college,
guitar lessons, this lesson,
piano,
that, you
know, other shit you're not good at, like all that going by, you would stop. You'd be like, dude.
A new floor because they ruined new carpeting in the living room because they ruined the carpet. Yeah,
like that is it's such a game changer. But I'll tell you right now, having my kids changed my life because
greatest part of my life.
Yeah, too. I was like, you know what, man, I have to work as hard as I possibly can, and there's a lot of things too that happen that you didn't plan for that are going to cost money. There's a lot of things that happen that you didn't plan for that are going to
be the greatest memories of your life.
Yeah.
That's the other part. That's the weird thing about the kid.
Yeah.
Is we've had these little moments that just happen on a day that you never would have expected a moment. And it's like a forever moment.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I love it.
Dude, thanks for having me,
dude,
man.
Thanks for coming, Joe
Did we do
Sib.
good? Did we do good?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. We did our best. That's what I know. We did our best.
I got to say, doing this podcast with you, I felt like I talked about stuff I've never talked about.
Well, good.
And you have a great demeanor with getting it out of you.
Great.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Where can people find you?
Everyone can find me, Joe Sib, S-I-B, on Instagram. You can go to my website, joesib.com. You can also email me, joesib22@gmail.
Why would they email you?
I don't know. Just be like, yo, dude.
I love fucking Biodome.
Biodome.
Okay, give your email. I didn't mean to break it.
No, just Joesib22, Joesib22@gmail. You can check out my Dry Bar special on Dry Bar. You can
go
check out
see that.
Yep, 800-pound gorilla special. They did a little mini special with me over the summer. And I'm going to be out on the road. You can check out all my tour dates at joesib.com.
Thanks, Joe.
Well, thank you for having me, bro. Love you too. Fucking awesome, bro.